Welcome to the work session of the Pickens County Board of Commissioners on Tuesday, March 21st. I think we'll just start right off with board membership reports. Patty, that's you first.
That is me starting off. ACRA, we have a meeting coming up on Tuesday. Again, we're gearing up for food and wine. And for the food and wine luncheon, as soon as I find, that's a great luncheon to go to. I'll find out when tickets are available and let you guys know because they sell out really fast. That's always a nice one to go to.
It's in the tent?
What's that?
It's in the tent?
No, they have it. They had it at the Jerome. They usually have it at the Jerome, and they have a special chef that comes, and they have wines usually sponsored. It's been Spain has been sponsoring. They had great chefs the last 2 years, it's a good way to kick off the spring and summer.
And they do some awards, don't they?
They do some awards, and sometimes they mix that up, but generally they give out. They're like. Person of the year kind of thing. It's different than winter school, but yeah, it's great. So as soon as I see those tickets go on sale, I'll let you guys know. Northwest COG and the EDD, I had Charlotte send you the Economic Development District seminar thing they have every May. It's over in Silverthorne. It's as soon as I get the agenda, I'm meeting with Rachel, who heads that. She's the executive director of the Economic Development District. I'm meeting with her tomorrow evening when I get to Silverthorne. When I find out what the agenda, it's a great seminar to go to. It's like $25, and I go over.
Yeah, I saw it was 25.
Yeah, it's really good. So the state demographer is usually there, Elizabeth Mort, and she does a great presentation. So I'll let you guys, as soon as I get the agenda, I'll make sure you see it. And then the COG meeting, I'm chairing it. That's why I'm going in person, because Alyssa Shank is on safari in Africa.
Oh, jeez.
With her family for spring break. With her whole family, her brothers and sisters and mom and dad. So I told her I would go over for that. And the only thing we really have pending, really of importance with COG is Skippy Mesereau's seminar that he does. And we've been polling all the member jurisdictions to see if anybody was interested in attending or sponsoring. And we hope to resolve that issue on Thursday.
Well, with Skippy not being reelected, is that going to simplify the
We don't know.
discussion?
We don't know if he'll still continue to do it or not. There won't be the conflict of interest question anymore, but there's other issues that I think it'll be interesting to see. And then the TPR, thank you, I did talk with Brian Pettit about those monies being maybe shifted to help sponsor the free bus service that they were talking about. And also the money's going for Cottonwood Pass and the Canyon. And they are still looking at, those monies will not come out of our TPR funding. Those will be other federal funds.
Yeah, they're coming out of the infrastructure, I think.
Yeah. So Brian's just been keeping me in the loop on that. There was something really interesting from Silt Town Council. They didn't want to support any money going towards Cottonwood Pass, even though because of their on-ramp and off-ramp issues and a pedestrian bridge. And I heard an interview while I was driving. A reporter was interviewing somebody from the town council, and they were upset with CDOT for not doing anything about all the development over there that's impacting the interstate. And I thought, well, then Silt shouldn't have approved all the development without wondering what's going to happen with the interstate. It's not like CDOT had any control. But I guess they have significant traffic backups, both going onto the highway and off of the highway. And then there's literally some infrastructure issues with the pedestrian bridge and its use, especially since they have 100 tiny homes. And they're expecting a lot
I
more.
have 100 tiny homes.
I have a 100 tiny home
Are they
project.
going on the south
I
side?
don't know. I just heard it on the
Oh.
radio. So I don't know if it's the one that's already developed. Is that in Rifle or is that in Silt? I don't know where the city line is over there.
I think there's one in Rifle, as I remember.
The one that's already
I haven't
built?
seen it actually, but
Yeah, I've seen it. I've driven through, but it's hard to tell where you are over there sometimes. So that's the biggest thing there. And then they interviewed someone from Garfield County about not wanting to support putting any money towards Cottonwood Pass because it's all in Eagle County, where the
work is going.
Yeah, yeah. But Brian's keeping an eye on it to make sure that the TPR funds are not tapped by anything else.
But Jankowski at the CDOT meeting that I went to about the canyon said that he was gonna support his Eagle, partners on putting in his vote for supporting the work.
In the
on
canyon?
Cottonwood, no.
On Cottonwood? Yeah, I don't know how his two fellow commissioners
Yeah.
stood on that. But yeah, and I think they're still looking at, to do the guardrails and the simple improvements to the canyon, especially, I mean, there's been significant rockfall. You can see the bruise nets are pretty full right now.
Yeah.
So they're doing their job, but it's scary driving through there.
Yeah, I know, especially after Annalise.
Because it was pouring rain when I came through, which makes it really sketchy, but, yeah, so that's where I am on my reports.
Okay. Hi, Greg, welcome. I'm sorry you're not feeling well. We can't hear you. We
Now?
can't hear you.
Can you
There you
hear
go. Okay, try
Now we
again.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm functional. I just have to nap a lot lately. So hopefully I'll be bounced back by tomorrow. That's my goal. But thank you, and I'm here and I'm following along. Are
Okay.
you ready for me, or do you want?
Oh, you can go now, yeah. Why don't you go now?
Okay, let's see, I'm gonna start, CC4CA, I was just reviewing, they've sent out a query just recently regarding building performance standards, looking for input and letter of testimony. Turns out that one building performance standard was really for 50,000 square foot buildings and larger, and I got confirmation from our staff that we really don't have a building like that that would even fit that standard here, so I don't think we're going to be weighing in on that. They have asked me to weigh in to testify when the okay, I'm going to try not to forget what I'm saying, blank out here. They had a testimony regarding something else, and it was regarding carbon sequestration. And I declined to testify in the first go around because carbon sequestration technology is still kind of sketchy, and until there are real guardrails on it that we understand well, I didn't want to bring it to you, and I didn't want to say anything on my own behalf. But I have reviewed the material. Basically, there's a legislation that would put funding toward carbon sequestration studies, and I think it's probably worth staying in the game, and I'll bring it back to you when it comes back around. So that's kind of the CC4CA stuff. I know that I believe June 9th is the CC4CA retreat, which happens to be the same day as the Rafter retreat, and I think another retreat. Somehow they always choose the same date in the summer, and I have to choose or find surrogates. But I'll get back to you on that. Regarding CORE, I'm going to have a little kind of an introductory conversation tomorrow with Laura and Kara regarding CORE. CORE, I think, is doing well. We've got a new regional group has formed that kind of came out of that Mountain Community Summit last fall, and CORE and I get on that with them probably about monthly, and we're discussing how we can work better to collaborate regionally to, one, bring funding this direction, and to align our goals regarding climate, and you'll be hearing more about us from that. QQ, Kelly sent out a letter from QQ that I had somehow missed. Maybe you've already seen it, and I'm going to skip over that because I have nothing to say about it.
We're going to talk about that at open discussion.
Excellent, thank you. Board of Health, our retreat for Board of Health is on May 12th. Sorry. May 12th is the scheduled Board of Health retreat. Looking forward to that. We'll be electing new chair and vice chair. I'm up for re-election. I told them I would do it again if they want me, and I think Krista Giesel would go again as well. That's going to be an interesting board meeting. Skipping over to RAFTA, I don't have anything for RAFTA right now, but if it occurs to me, I'll bring it up. RWAPA, I don't have anything yet. We'll probably be meeting soon. I'm gonna skip to the U.S. Forest Service. I did have a chat with our district White River Forest Supervisor Scott Fitzwilliams recently, and we're going to talk again. And the concern on the top of his mind and mine at the same time were really the effects of tourism and recreation and development on fragile ecosystems. So I think the study that Open Space has brought to us last week is perfectly timely. Scott was saying that the fun fact he gave me was that in the 6 years, about last 6 years, visitation in the White River National Forest has gone from 12 million to 17 million. So it's a dramatic increase in visitation, and they are really feeling the effects of that. So we'll be seeing more and hearing more, and that's the nutshell for me. I'm sorry if I went too quickly. I'm trying to.
You're doing
trying to
just
keep
fine.
this moving.
I think I'll just mention
Thank
that CORE is having a strategic planning retreat this Thursday that
Oh, right.
that Greg
Yes,
and I will be
that,
going to.
yeah. I knew there was something else going on this Thursday. I'm hoping to be there for it.
Me
Thanks.
too. I hope you are. So we'll bring that back to you. Why don't you go ahead, Kelly?
Yeah,
Do
I
you
just
have a question?
no, I wanted to bring something up with Greg related to QQ and RWAPA, perhaps to flag for follow up. And sorry, Greg, I'm not on Zoom, so you can't see me. I don't think you can anyway. But
I see it.
oh, good. Okay, at the QQ meeting, you know, April Long, who's just a superstar, had brought up a topic when we were hearing from Denver Water and Aurora Water and Colorado Springs Water Utilities. So QQ had invited all these huge water purveyors on the Front Range to present to QQ, and it was really focused on what they're doing for water planning, water conservation, working with municipalities on like code updates, etc. And April brought up, she's like, you know, it would be really great if we could all work more collaboratively to help the headwaters areas when our rivers are really low on water and you guys have all this water stored that you're not using. You know, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone on the Front Range was thinking about Colorado and its water more holistically, and we were able to negotiate temporary releases on our side of the mountains to keep our rivers healthy? And, you know, I kind of was like, here, you know, we would love to support that. And I think it'd be something to follow up with April, really to figure out if some way to communicate that or continue that conversation or push that conversation along.
Are you saying releases that rather than sending that water to the Front Range, we would release them to the rivers here?
Yeah.
I see.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So they're holding all this water up in
Yeah.
Dillon and Twin Lakes and, you know, Grizzly Reservoir, and, you know, and we need it. And wouldn't it be great if when we were having low flows on our side that they would let us have that water rather than worrying about just keeping it in storage and losing it to evaporation. So I just wanted to flag that
So
for you.
what, did they respond? Was there any response?
I mean, they did, you know, they were like, yes, we're open to that conversation. You know, we all need to care about all of Colorado's rivers and recognize what value it brings beyond tap water in our houses on the Front Range. So,
And our sprinklers for our lawns.
right. So, anyway, I wanted to flag that. I thought that was great. I'm sure April's
Great, yeah.
thinking about how to make that
I'll
happen,
mention it.
but it'd be great if that came up at RWAPA in the future too.
I'll mention that to her. That's great that she brought that up. Thank you.
Why don't you go ahead since you're already on board?
Oh, okay. So I will start with APSHA. The two big policy conversations at APSHA right now. One is related. We passed. I think we did the second reading, adopting a policy to create a pilot program for right sizing. And so this is essentially like a matching program where we're doing matchmaking. Well, no, people have to match on their own and then come and apply to APSHA where APSHA wants to start off with doing 5 of these, kind of administering applications for 5 matches, whereby essentially people would be swapping units. A bigger family into a bigger unit, a smaller family into a smaller unit to maximize the efficiency of the bedroom counts. And the idea is that people will have figured out their matches before they come to APSHA. And there's some criteria with APSHA about how to re-qualify for that, as well as updating deed restrictions when they take new deed restrictions on the new units that they're swapping for. And so this is a pilot program. The way that they envision administering it is, advertising it broadly and then having a day in April where they open for applications. And the first 5 completed applications are what they will process. They are talking to the city about their own lessons learned from when they did that with the demolition permits and had some issues there, so that we don't run into similar problems about multiple applications or incomplete applications being submitted. So we'll see how that goes, and then if the board decides they want to do more than 5, then we can revisit that with the board.
Question on that, Kelly. How do the people meet someone who has the unit they might want to swap with? Are they having people who say if someone has way too much room and they want to downsize, they just put their name in, and then they'll have a list of those, the 2 sides of the equation?
So right now, APSHA is not like creating a messaging board for that. We've talked about doing that. The staff feels like they are going to have 5 matches between known people. So people who know each other. It could be parents and children, quite frankly, who know each other, to apply for those swaps at this point. And there is some limitations about, if you are only a category 3, like moving into an RO unit or a category 5 unit, there's some considerations for that, because we still want people to move into homes that they can afford and maintain. And Greg, I see.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or make a suggestion? I love this. This is great. I think this is really great thinking on the part of APSHA. And I'm just wondering if this would be an opportunity to query, anybody who's in APSHA housing or has an interest in this to participate somehow, to talk about, what would it take to get them to do the swaps and the buy downs, or, however it's going to work. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering if there would be any value in reaching out to the community on this, that are most affected by it, and seeing, perhaps there are certain incentives and things that might inspire more people to do this. I'm sure they have 5 people on the tip of their tongues, but there could be many more if the conditions are right. So I'm just wondering if this is a good time for outreach, and perhaps APSHA's already doing that.
Yeah, we did survey all the owners, and I won't remember all the outcomes of that survey right off the top of my mind, but I'd be happy to report out in more detail on that, or share around the results, the memo that we got with those results. But we did ask, it went to owners, we asked, like, what would you be interested in? And it was, would it be money? Would it be a unit close to town? Would it be a unit that allows pets? Would it be a unit, would help with moving expenses and moving assistance? It was sort of a menu of options that went to people. Would it just be a buyout? Like, you're ready to leave the community, and if the price was right, you would buy out and leave. So we do have some of those results, and this sort of grew out of a desire by APSHA to see, like, well, can we get some of this done without having to put anything on the table? Like, is there enough intrinsic interest in the program? And so that's kind of the first step we've taken with designing this. But I'd be happy to share with you the results of that survey.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And then the second big thing we're talking about, and I think we're going to find time to schedule for our board to hear about this program, but it's a capital repairs grant program. And so the city has set aside $200,000 for maximum $5,000 grants that people could apply to for really essential repairs that, you know, inside their units. So they're not like the big capital repairs like roofs, shared walls, garages and carports, things like that. It's really like if someone has a hot water heater that goes out, or if they have, you know, a real internal roof issue. And that it's targeted towards folks who are categories 1, 2, and 3, and it's a sliding scale of the amount that people could qualify for. So the lower income categories could qualify for a higher grant with a smaller match, but everybody has a match requirement that they're going to cover a portion of the repair. So this is sort of a pilot program too. Right now, the city has asked that it only fund units in the city boundaries unless the county comes up with money or matches the $200,000 that they've put into the pot to then open up the program to units in unincorporated Pickens County. And so I think we've talked about having this board find time to invite APSHA to present to us.
Yeah, they've been
On that.
invited.
Okay, great.
And Matthew
Thank
said
you.
they're waiting until such and such gets finalized, and he said that they were not considering asking us for 200,000. They were considering having the city and the county split that 200,000.
That's
So,
news too.
yeah.
Okay.
But that was a couple of weeks ago, so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad we're gonna get them, and because I thought it would be important for this board to hear the presentation before we would commit to any money.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's and then we've just had some minor policy updates, for example, about when we update our AMI numbers and things like that. But that's about it for APSHA. And then I'll just kind of combine CCI and CCAT because there's just a lot going on. And I have to say I'm not as organized as I like to be about presenting the legislation. We're going to talk later today. It's not really presented correctly on the agenda, but we're going to talk about the governor's statewide land use and housing bill because it's a biggie, and I wanted to give it some detail with you all. There's also, we're told, going to be some legislation introduced relating to tax relief coming this session that we don't know the details of yet. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening here in the last part of session, the last rush, because we're beginning of May, so we're halfway through. We're already halfway through. And I can't think of any bills off the top of. Oh, there's another bill that I think we need to pay attention to. Again, related to sort of land use policies, and that has to do with getting rid of growth caps, which I think will be very problematic for Pickens County. And so that hasn't been introduced yet. It's expected to come next week, and I think we should have a conversation because I'm nervous that it will undermine our growth management quota system. So
A lot of things.
Thank you, Kelly.
yes,
Steve?
Okay, at CCI, there's one bill that was an Health and Human Services bill having to do with implementation of the Behavioral Health Administration. And there was a whole lot of discussion about what to make the different districts, the BHA districts, and a lot of the counties want to have it be the same as the opioid implementation districts because those counties are already working together on behavioral health and substance abuse issues, and they think that they should keep them together. But the administration is wanting to set up completely different districts, and so there's quite a big fight about that for some reason, but it could directly affect how that plays out in our area. The long bill will be introduced in the legislature on March 27th, which is just a week away. So once that hits the docket, a lot of the other action will slow down on other bills because they concentrate so much on the long bill.
What is the long bill?
That's the budget
Oh.
bill. that's brought by the Joint Budget Committee. And it takes them a couple of weeks to get clear through that whole process. So then that bunches all these other bills up
At the end.
at the end. So there's a big rush at the end then to do them. On the TRED, Tourism Resorts and Economic Development, there's a House Bill 1190, which is affordable housing right of first refusal. And there are a huge number of counties at CCI who are opposed to that. They were saying this is like eminent domain, that the counties could step in and like condemn the land. But then there were other counties where, like us, where if you have an opportunity to purchase an already built building for affordable housing, you don't want to let it slip away. You want to be able to purchase that land. And it's not eminent domain because the people already have the place up for sale, and they just, in this case, would have found another buyer, but then the county or the city could match that offer and like preempt the other party from purchasing the property. So there's a huge amount of debate about that at CCI, and
I would just note, CCAT supports that.
I have a question.
yeah, it's really a good bill, and it's Faith Winter is the senator who is the sponsor of that.
Now Patty has.
So this passed the House. It's going to the Senate at this point.
I have a question, and I don't know if it's been discussed, since this is new to me, but wonder if I was the private sector coming in wanting to buy, and somebody from a housing authority or whatever, you know, could step in front of me. Wonder if I chose to deed restrict, would I then, I mean, that would be an opportunity to go around any kind of conflict or whatever by saying you still have the opportunity, if you're the private sector, you could deed restrict and then you could purchase. So I don't know if that's been mentioned, but that might be a thought.
Do people do that in the private sector?
You can, yeah, you can deed restrict your property. We did that in a lot of cases for, I can't remember what we used it for, if you, to pay lower fees or whatever, if you came
Right.
in. And so you can.
Instead of a mitigation fee.
Mm-hmm. And it's like whatever the program is in Eagle, where people from the private sector can come in and get, you know, help with the down payment assistance, whatever. It's not Indeed, that's the company that finds you, but it's something that they use in Eagle County. I think it's Eagle County. So it's just a thought that might be a way to win-win.
Yeah.
I'll send
right.
Perry Will a little
So I
note.
think, I mean, all indications are this bill is going to pass, but it maybe will be amended some more before it is, because the House already passed it, and with the Democrats controlling both houses, I think it will get through in some fashion or another, but that's one that could affect us. Let's see, on other things beyond CCI, Club 20 is having the annual meeting on April 13th and 14th, and I'm planning on being there for that. Senior Council, Chad Federvich has come up with the annual report on the Aging Well initiative, which just to stay in the whole program, he has to do an annual report just telling what Pickens County is doing. So it looks like lots of action items that the senior center has done to, to meet to continue providing services for the aging community. We're still looking for more new members and putting out a lot of feelers. Seth Saxon has said he's not going to be on the senior council anymore, and he was a really good member for a lot of years, but since we appointed him
He has two
recently,
babies now.
he has not been to one meeting. He's just, I think he's stretched too thin with
Got two babies.
babies and other responsibilities.
He's always at the shelter.
Yeah, you probably see him all the time.
And the opioid settlement agreement committee is still working on getting you know, getting someone picked through the RFP process for doing all of the publicity and educational kind of things for the public. And that's all I have.
Okay, well, John Ely is away this week. I did go to the last meeting of the River District, and I also just pass on some bills that are affecting our water use. There's the setting up, it's SB 23010, which is setting up a board, a committee to sort of work with the Water Resources and Agricultural Review. So it's really just setting up the committee and saying that they have to have 4 meetings a year, and it's doesn't really say specifically what's going to come out of that. And then there's 1221, which is the water quality data standards, and that's the has to do with the maximum amount of pollutants that can be discharged daily into state waters without exceeding applicable water quality standards. So it's like it's looking at whether they need to change the amount that is allowable. And so then these are just things that the Water District is looking at. And then there's an expected HOA landscaping bill. It's anticipated, it's not out yet, because Colorado has 10,000 HOAs with extensive landscaping. So the bill is designed to remove barriers to artificial turf, xeriscaping, drought-resistant plants, and other ground covers. Because right now there are HOAs that restrict the use of those. So this is an attempt to remove those barriers. And then there's the stream restoration one, I think I mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago, which is also anticipated, and that is the Department of Natural Resources is introducing this, and it's about the degradation of streams and rivers over 200 years of ag practices and how road developments, channelization, mining, and climate-driven disasters. And so this is an effort to allow jurisdictions to do work within their streams, kind of like what we were looking at yesterday at the park, without affecting water law. So it's to allow a certain amount of work to be done without having to go through all of the state water law, and give that ability to improve streams back to the local jurisdictions to do that. And that's that. And then I
Francie
have,
and I were on a call with DNR and our Healthy Rivers staff about this bill. They wanted our input.
Great.
The Healthy Rivers staff is really supportive.
Great.
okay, and then in terms of Proposition 123, I went to a meeting yesterday, but it wasn't really very instructive. And are we talking about that later?
No.
When you talk about the other thing? Okay.
I'm hearing a lot about 123.
I know. And the concern that I brought up at the meeting, you have to, if you go online, you can read about how to apply for funding under Proposition 123. It did pass. And, but it's probably not going to be that helpful to us. I think Kelly addressed this earlier, partly because we have so many affordable housing units, and to be a partner in this and to get the funding, you have to agree to increase your inventory. I don't know if it's investment or inventory. I think it's inventory by 3% every year. Well, that is a lot of housing units for Aspen and Pitkin County.
And where do we put them?
Exactly. So it's not like we have to oppose the whole thing. We can just not apply for funds. But it would be nice to be able to apply for funds. So there's more information coming. They're going to have some more informational meetings online coming up, because there was quite a bit of frustration at the meeting yesterday.
And I have a question. Since it's a proposition that passed, obviously, you'd have to go back to the voters again to amend it, to make it make better sense for everybody.
And there is a request to do that.
Oh, I'm not surprised. And learn as you go, and
There is some implementation authority that wasn't all
Wiggle room?
detailed out in the voter language to implement it, which is pretty, I think, standard for these, and so that's why we're trying to use that as a way to make it a better program.
Good, it's good to hear. So they
Yeah.
did leave some wiggle room.
Well, and to be honest, the proponents of it were very, that's how they tried to garner our support during the election season was, oh, we're going to have rulemaking where we can clean some of this up, or we can go back to the legislature to clean some of this up. And so we're kind of making them do that.
So the
Camping on
meeting
that.
yesterday was a CCAT it was 4 CCAT members, and it was put on by DOLA about
I
this.
saw the thing come through.
It was a webinar, and that was kind of a mistake. So the next one's gonna be a Zoom meeting so that people can participate more openly. Anyway. So then, House Bill 23-1240 is a land use and natural resources bill. It's a sales use tax exemption wildfire disaster construction. You cannot believe how much conversation came up around this. It was really crazy. Basically, the idea is to exempt homeowners from local and state fees and taxes if you lost your home or had damage during a declared wildfire disaster in 2020, 2021, or 2022, which does include Grizzly and the one in Grand Junction. What was that one called?
The Marshall Fire? The
No,
one in, the
it
one in
starts with a
Boulder?
P. Well, it definitely includes Marshall.
Oh.
This is proposed by the Boulder legislators. And so one of the guys who's an insurance salesman talked about, well, there's a lot of people who underinsure their property in order to save money on their insurance bills. And so then when it comes time
Oh, my
to
God.
get paid back, they have residual bills that weren't covered by their insurance. So why would we lose sales tax money on that amount of leftover? It's not fair to the other counties. And so
So it's kind of like, well, you save money on your insurance, so you use that to rebuild your house.
So it was opposed by CCI. Doesn't mean it's not going to pass, but it was opposed by CCI. And then our land use meeting was held up for just a minute to talk about a Health and Human Services draft bill about the childhood prosecution bill, and it's comes, I think, primarily from a request from Polis to raise the minimum age for being referred to the required referral to the justice sector from 10 to 13. So that if you were 10, 11, or 12, you wouldn't be put into the judicial system, you'd be put into local organizations that help youth, which we have pretty good ones here, but there was a lot of discussion against it because this came from a woman who works with victims' rights. She thought that there's no built-in accountability, and the kids aren't required to go to the services provided. So that one took up quite a bit of time. The pesticide bill came up with the ag meeting again, and just about how, for a change, most of the counties in the state don't want local control over pesticides. They want it done by the state, because some people have property that goes over 2 different
Right.
counties, so what, they can spray this on this part and not on this part, and so that was, I think, the only time so far I've heard most of those people go against local control. And then I think that might be all in here. Here we go. Yes, this one. So another one was a bill 1233 that requires the state electrical board to adopt rules requiring compliance starting next January with a provision to provide charging stations at multifamily projects. So you're building a multifamily project, you have to install 2 charging stations, a minimum of 2 charging stations. And so the bill prohibits a landlord from prohibiting the installation of EV charging equipment, and this had quite a bit of discussion as well, because there are a lot of commissioners in the state who don't want to be told what to do.
Even if it's the right thing.
So there was a motion to oppose, but the motion to oppose failed. So then I made a motion to monitor, so it's being monitored.
So
And-
it could be a 3,000 unit multifamily project, and you'd only have to put in a minimum of 2.
Two, and it's too expensive.
Or you could be a
So-
20 multifamily unit, and you could put in a minimum of 2.
Well,
So
the
it's
reason
not
that
it's not a proportional.
No, and the reason it was voted to monitor it is because Jeannie said it's definitely going to pass, and so if we
Oh, interesting.
don't support it, then we lose our voice entirely. So we're going to monitor it.
I'm sorry, Francie, what did you say? It's, we lose what? And it's
We
definitely
lose our
not
voice
what?
because it's going to pass. So if we oppose it,
Right.
then CCI just looks silly.
Well, I would certainly vote for our board to approve it. And my guess is it's gonna change a little bit. But I think it's something we should be pushing for.
I agree. And then, this was another one. It's, you know, how Kelly came back last year and said, do we really have to do these meetings? So sometimes it is really hard. I was sitting between Sandy Hollingsworth, though, and Kathy Chandler Henry. So I was at least among,
You're in the
like-minded
safe
people.
zone.
So another one is the NREL has developed this software for permitting and supervising the basically the installation of solar and how to track it and everything. And they're offering it for free to people to use to help with their solar permitting. And there was a lot of discussion about how, well, stuff from the state doesn't work and we don't want to be told what to do and that we have to use this software. And, you know, and I was like, nobody's telling you have to do this. If you want to, it's available to you, you know. And I think we ended up amending that to make sure that we're only going to receive it if it's compatible with systems we already have or something like that.
A little paranoia
But
down
it was
there?
the same people again voting to pass it, you know. It
There are
was
so many
San Miguel
across the
and-
state in rural areas, conservative areas of the state. There's opposition to electric vehicles and to solar electricity production.
There's actually a whole group of advocates across the country. It's a very large group, advocates for opposing solar. There was a story on NPR about it right after I came out of this meeting. And how as soon as they hear about a solar facility that's about to be built, they start garnering support to oppose it, and they show up at local meetings and disseminate false information, and it's pretty,
That's crazy.
it's crazy. I agree.
But you know, and it's,
See, that's the same group that about 100 years ago was really against the advent of the automobile. And perhaps back then they were actually right.
A Luddites.
Yeah, we should have
Call them
listened to
the
them then.
horse and buggy set.
yeah. Well, you know, and especially for some of our rural counties, I'll be real quick.
Can I bring up a CCI?
Yeah.
With the rural counties, is their economic development is wind power. Look at Prowers with their huge wind farm, and look at BOCC County has big wind farms popping up because that's what happens out there. The sun shines and the wind
And they
blows.
should be leasing it.
Yes.
And making money off their egg land.
At the last meeting that we didn't have a chance to report on, there was a lot of talk about how if we're going to have any legislation about solar and wind, then we have to have legislation about how to decommission these places, these sites. And those of us at the other end of the room are like, well, what about decommissioning oil and gas exploration, and
Whoa.
production wells and mines, and how we don't have anything on decommissioning those when we put those up, you know, like, oh, it's unbelievable. Anyway, did you want to add to CCI?
Yeah, I would say two things. One, I will say that there have been some very close votes where our friendly member counties have been able to quash bad positions, unfriendly positions to Pitkin County. So when everyone shows up, there's strength in numbers there. And then it came to my attention, because normally I'm on the Health and Human Services, I'm the Health and Human Services person for CCI's committee, But I had a conflict to meet with the governor's office on land use, and I thought Lindsay Maish was our proxy, which makes sense because she's our health and human services director. But we made John Peacock our proxy, which makes no sense. So I think we might want to revisit.
Used to be
that.
Nan.
And, yeah, because CCI was like, we don't have her down, and I went back and looked at our, resolution.
Yeah.
We need to
Steve
do that.
thankfully was able to fill in,
Yeah,
and Lindsay got on
and
the
Lindsay and
phone.
I were texting constantly back and forth. She's on top. She understands all the issues. And she would be good to be the proxy.
We need to do
yeah,
that.
she told
She
me,
would be.
I saw her yesterday, she was like, I'd be more than happy to attend those meetings, blah, 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 so I think we should
That'd be
put that
great.
on for
That's a good
cleanup.
idea.
We're looking at
That's a great
Charlotte.
idea.
Okay.
She's
Kelly
making
and I were at.
Might just be like John, I just don't
Hi,
think it's
John.
the best use of his time.
Oh, there's John. We're talking about you.
Well, there he is up at
Well,
Williams Lake again.
I started listening all of a sudden now, but, I think we did that when we were in transition, when we were going through the application process initially, if I remember correctly. And so I think the intent was to go back and appoint our human services director again, so that makes sense. I think it's a step we just missed.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Kelly and I were at the CCAT breakfast with some legislators and Polis, and I used my time there to lobby the Boulder people to rejoin CCI. Because I said, we need your vote, we need your voice there. And so I did talk to the woman, I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name, but she's really interested in ag issues, so she's gonna try and talk to her fellow commissioners and see if they can rejoin CCI.
Is Eagle still out?
Is what?
No, they're in.
They're back in? Because they were out for a while, weren't they?
Uh,
Oh, that's right. You said you're with Kathy Chandler Henry.
I will say, Governor Polis said some really positive things. It was like the best speech I've heard from Governor Polis, but he talked about progressive taxing policy, and which I thought was really promising. And because I asked a question about like, how do we ensure that tax relief goes to people who need it and not people who are really responsible for driving up all the high demand and valuations and blah blah blah. So he's interested in taxing policy, and he also said he wants to tackle short-term rental taxation, and so two things
Do
forthcoming.
you know one of the biggest things I'm finding with real estate transfer tax information that I'm reading is the use of real estate transfer taxes to help people with property tax abatement. So people like Jim Markolunas, those folks, which I thought was interesting. I had thought it was more for other needs like housing or infrastructure, or, social services and justice systems. But there was a lot of emphasis on creating funds for helping people with their property taxes. I was surprised to read that. I don't remember that from before, but it's been part of the discussion for years.
Okay, well, I think it's time for us to move on. You guys have
Yeah.
been very patient.
Test run,
Yeah,
test
Very
run.
informative.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Okay, welcome back to the work session for the Pitkin County Board of Commissioners on Tuesday, March 21st. We're now going to move on to volunteer board appointments, which is one of my favorite things to do. So Charlotte, it's up all to you.
Okay, so as you all know, this is the season to renew terms, and there are several boards that you all like to have renewal interviews. And Jeffrey Woodruff is here today, and he's on the Planning and Zoning Board. We have 2 renewals on this board, and that would be Jeffrey and Chelsea Clark. Of course, when we do this renewal, we open it up and have to advertise. And we have 1 new applicant as well. So Chelsea and the new applicant will be interviewed next week.
Saw that.
So we
Thank
have
you.
Jeffrey today. And I will let you all ask your questions.
Okay, do you want to just talk to us for a minute first? And welcome, Jeffrey. Sorry to keep you waiting.
No worries. I enjoyed the conversation, so it was hard not to chime in a couple times.
And thank you. I want to say thank you for your years of doing this. It's really remarkable how long you've been doing it. And
Well,
how
that's where I should
consistent you are.
start. Thank you. So there's one correction in your packet. I'm from the 60s. I've only been serving since 2018. I think the packet says I've been serving 11 or 12 years, which sounds lovely. But I joined you in 2018 on a partial term, served a full term, so this would be for my 2.5 term.
Okay.
And I served 2 terms, or 2 years as chair through a few Zoom meetings and a few confrontational / community, wide initiatives, including Pitkin County Solar and Pandora. But as you know, a large part of what we do is location and extent. A large part of what we do is growth management. You've seen a lot of the applications that come through planning and zoning. We've been a board of 7 for the last 2 years, I think, which is working well. The growth management applications are interesting. I would say one of the caveats there, we've seen more nonprofit contributions, which I would flag to this board as a question mark. So even though it looks like the dollar amount of growth management application has gone up, not commensurate with the price of TDRs, it still doesn't seem commensurate with what the applicant's receiving, nor with what the applicant is giving then to the community. And so if you're earmarking or putting in money that's going to a nonprofit and not to something like the Aspen Fire or Snowmass Ambulance, you're receiving a tax credit as well as square footage. So please, I'm putting that out there as we look through these applications. I throw that out there as a red flag.
That's not the first time you've asked us to make some changes so that you guys
I
can.
never even thought of that.
The numbers, when you look at them, if they're donating $300,000 or $500,000, the net out of pocket is $100,000 or $300,000. So it's significant to give to a 501c3 rather than Snowmass or Aspen. So again, we'd rather see, as a community, we'd rather see the UTVs funded rather than 501c3s. So again, I'm flagging that for a future conversation.
Okay.
We did in the past year look through 2 master plans. So we had the Brush Creek master plan, and we're still working through the Castle Creek master plan at a rather slow pace. Brush Creek, the highlights for you, I think, to consider, we looked heavily at Firewise construction as well as water and the limitations of that metro district, as well as the area, which is, you've got a 4-inch pipe coming from Snowmass, feeding an entire community. And so if we look at NFPA homes, so NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association, if you're building large homes, you need to be sprinklered. But if you only have a 4-inch water pipe feeding an entire community, you can't sprinkler those homes. So we now have, through sort of planning and zoning process, 4 neighborhoods that in essence have their own house caps. So Frying Pan, Maroon Creek did an overlay in the past couple of years, which put a cap on house size. Now Brush Creek, and I'm going to blank on the third one, but the fourth one, but someone can help me on that. So we are seeing restrictions in home size come through practical means like code adherence and sprinklering homes. So again, I think that's a good trend. What else can I say? We've seen quite a few location extent, where, again, for this board, the important thing is that we keep the master plans up to date, so we're not, the only tool in the location extent is the master plan. If the master plan is 20 years old, it's very difficult to sort of regulate using today's standards. So we've seen quite a few come in, obviously through open space, through Cozy Point. We've had quite a few. We just had the Maroon Creek, which I think was in front of you, the Maroon Creek, the bike path, whatever you want to call it, the ski path that goes through both city and county. And so it was nice to see both the city and county open space as well as John Spees on the city side
Oh, at
present
Pyramid?
that.
At the Moore
At
property.
Pyramid, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that, I mean, I think that's an improvement sort of in the way location extent has been going, that the right questions are being asked, that the board's asking what I call sort of level 2 questions. Level 1 is, you know, you've read the packet, you understand it. Level 2 is, what's the implication over the next 20 years when we approve this location extent? So I think we're getting better at that sort of level 2 understanding of what's in front of us. What can I say? I have two other things I could add. One would be, what can we move faster on? And I guess the other one is countywide issues that might not be appearing at the county commissioners, but we're seeing sort of bubble up at planning and zoning. And so I'll start with some of the issues we're seeing. You mentioned discharging of waste treatment facilities and water quality. We have seen the degradation of systems throughout the county. Most recently, we had a location extent for Aspen Village, which the aeration of their effluent doesn't meet CDPHE standards, and yet they're discharging to the Roaring Fork River. So the reason, again, to raise this at this board is to say we have two issues. One is water quality, and the other two is funding for infrastructure.
That came up with a Board of Health applicant, the water quality on their application. It was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Neely, who usually is in John Peacock's seat, looked at me and said, do you guys ever say no to anything? And as chair, part of my job was to get the resolutions and the applications to the point where we would approve them, right? So we're looking at every line within the recitals and get them to an approval status. In the case of the waste treatment facility, it was very difficult to say yes when it's unfunded and it clearly doesn't meet, state health standards. And there have been a couple other cases where my vote has not been a yes vote, even though, generally stuff does go through planning and zoning for either a single read or two more readings, with this board. What can we move faster on? Dark sky initiatives, farm worker housing. We took a stab at it a couple years ago.
What for housing?
Farm worker housing.
No.
So we did a land use code text change amendment that was citizen-led that would impact, and Open Space and Trails has since updated their planning to allow for seasonal farm worker housing. But it's one of the areas that the unmet need is, we need farmers to be located on their farms. They can't travel 30 miles to irrigate or travel 30 miles to, adjust a ditch or watch livestock. And so we adopted a land use code text change amendment about 2 years ago that could use some updates. There's other text code amendments that we did, for example, the Energy Working Group 2 years ago, that we probably should revisit and think about some updates to those. I'll stop there. How's that for an intro?
I do remember 2
Yeah.
years ago when you guys came before us and I said specifically,
Yeah.
so are you asking us to make some changes so that you don't have to say yes to these things? So this is like a refinement of that. So I appreciate that. I also really appreciated your application. It was fascinating to read it. And what do you mean by stop slide decks?
So Guy Kawasaki wrote a book called The Rules for Revolutionaries, one of which I've adopted in my life, which is more Excel and less PowerPoint. And
Can you start over with that again, please?
So, so let me take it back to this board. So specifically, I was asked as a planning and zoning representative to review, we had 3 applicants for an RFP to study embodied energy as part of the overall growth project. And I said, I think it was to Zach at the time, accept 0 of them. that none of them are qualified. They can all measure greenhouse gases, but they couldn't measure embodied energy, right? And so greenhouse gases are the O&M, or the operations and maintenance of a building, and embodied energy is all the materials that go into it.
Right.
And I said, you have 3 applicants that could do this really well, but they've never done this. So we're going to pay them $60,000 to basically get up to speed, and we're going to supply them all the data. And so not only did we supply them the data, and oh, by the way, the 60 is only half the cost, because then you have the other half that's the staff time. So call it 120 really on our books for one slide deck that actually holds no merit, right? Because it's garbage out. So yeah, I would, I guess to round out the conversation, to say, when we look at the overall growth conversation over the next couple of months, that the critical thing is really that if the goal is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in the county through some change in growth management, then how do we see that over the next 20, 30 years? Because this is a strategic long-term conversation. Don't show me any more PowerPoint slides. Show me the Excel budget for carbon. That's a specific
that.
answer.
I have some more things, but I'll wait. So go ahead, Patty.
Yeah, your application is awesome, and you do an amazing job. As you know, we've been telling you for how many years now? Not 12, but maybe 5. And yeah, you missed one meeting, and you know what? Your sarcasm is well noted on that one. But I want to know what you do in your free time, other than look at your view.
So it's funny, at the top of the page I wrote, we live in a beautiful place, and I try to start every meeting with that. And so truly, in the past week, I've skied Aspen and Snowmass. I hike the BLM line, which is my backyard. It's 15 square miles that right now is mule deer and elk. And so, yeah, I'm an outdoorsman, I guess. I don't kill anything. I'm a vegetarian / vegan. So that's part of who I am. But yeah, I'm a disappointment as well. I only read 50, 60 books a year. My mom's in that 160 range.
Really?
So I'm
Well, how many do you read, Francie?
Yeah, I'm a lightweight.
Probably like you, 60 or something.
Yeah.
A lot.
So yeah, I mean, this is home. This is an absolutely beautiful place. I'll be at Geraldine Brooks tonight, which everyone should be at 6 p.m.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
She's over at Pepe this evening. Yeah.
She is?
And if you haven't read Horse, you should.
I'm
read
halfway
Horse.
through Horse right
Yeah,
now.
you should finish it.
And I just read The People of the Book.
Yeah.
So,
And
March,
I go to
a while
Francie
ago.
now she always has a paperback for me to read.
Oh, cool.
And I bring them back well read, let
Yeah.
me tell you.
Where's your house, Jeffrey?
I'm sorry?
Where's your house? Where's your
So
house?
I'm up on Light Hill, and so I'm about 6 houses from the top. And the BLM, again, is like the best backyard in the world. I enjoy Steve's backyard, Nicholson Creek Road, Windstar. It just has a special place because it's this time of year with the snow on it. It could take you 2.5 hours to do the loop as a walk, and you'll see 0 people. So it's funny, as everyone said, oh, we're growing and this is crazy. And I'm like, well, but I can go on a walk any day of the week, 5-6 miles, and see 0 to 5 people.
Yeah,
And
when you
so-
fly over this valley, it is remarkable how much space there is.
Yeah.
Don't forget to tell people where you're going on a walk so we can keep track. Thank you for your service, we really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the questions.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Steve.
So Jeffrey, you got to be chairman of the P&Z during the pandemic time when everything was really screwy, virtual meetings, but I'm curious how things, and I know you're not chairman anymore, but what's your perception of how is the P&Z operating now have people started to be present at the meetings in person, or there's still a lot of virtual attendees? And how is it working doing a combination of people in person and people virtually?
Yeah, so I'm going to roll the tape back 2+ years and say the last person I shook hands with and the last meeting we had and the day we closed the door on the county building, John Peacock was leaving. We were having the Bobby Oxenberg subdivision. And it was literally the last person I shook hands with. So that was the last meeting. And for the next 2 years, I was chair, mostly virtual. Today, mostly hybrid. So hybrids either because of health reasons or personal choice. My meeting style is more of a conversation sometimes, depends on the agenda item. If it's open space, for example, it's should be more of a conversation versus a traditional land use, a location extent for a government entity versus a traditional land use. I would say we went from inefficient and it took longer, like everyone on Zoom, to we were pretty efficient. And as you know, the one of the hard parts, not difficult, like, but we don't regularly meet. I mean, if there's not caseload or if there's not a master plan, we're not meeting, I don't think, in April. I think we're successful on Zoom. I think we continue, no one complained that the public wasn't heard. This still is a better venue. The Dunaway room is a better venue, to be honest, sorry. And that's where I started. That's where it felt more like a community room, if you will. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but yeah, my choice would not be chaired remotely for 2 years. That was not
That's
enjoyable.
tough.
But we started every day at 5 p.m. always. We started the second we had a quorum always. So the second we were at 4 people, we started the meeting. And it was in deference to the people, to the staff, as well as to the client. So we managed a modicum of professional courtesy, even though the medium was not the choice to have some in-depth conversations. The largest, probably in terms of Brush Creek, I think we did a lot of work on, we refined it. Castle Creek, again, we're doing a lot of work on refining it. I'm not saying that we're authors, I'm saying we're active in terms of what will that final output be, because we know that's what we're going to be able to use in a location extent. And so we're not looking at, do we pass that in 2 hours? It could be 3 months, and the long-range planners understand that as well. So, sorry I got off the Zoom topic.
Okay.
No worries.
Thank you.
Did you?
Greg is this-
Greg?
Thank you. Yeah, Jeffrey, great to see you, and thank
Likewise.
you. And yes, this application is actually, it asks a lot of great questions, and I was hoping you could actually help us answer some of these questions. But really, what you're doing is challenging us to work more closely with P&Z and help you with some of these things, and I really do appreciate that. Could we work more proactively to update county and caucus master plans and agree on timeframes to upgrade critical plans, creating an operating rhythm, and then this thing about the critical infrastructure failing. There's a lot here, and I really appreciate it. And what I'd love to ask you, as the chair of the P&Z and as somebody who's been there in the trenches, will it require more joint meetings or just more one-on-one outreach? What do we need to do to help you and to help ourselves? Because I'm aligned with your goals here.
No, I appreciate your question, and for those people that don't use operating rhythm as an expression, it's much like you have your annual retreat. It's always in X month. The operating rhythm between Board of County Commissioners and Planning and Zoning could be quarterly face-to-face, where you're not seeing at my renewal, but we're actually saying, look, this infrastructure issue is today. We need to help Aspen Village. They don't have the financial wherewithal, even though it's another one of the HOAs, as you discussed in the last session. Can we tackle this? Is this something, is it CARA that could be, or CARA that could be reaching out at a grant level, at an infrastructure level? We would love to see you guys quarterly. And I think it makes sense, and especially given the fluidity of the growth conversation, that you should have that conversation with us, not say, oh, go watch the tape post to the P&Z. I think we should be along for the ride for that. The infrastructure, again, not necessarily directly in our purview, but it is vis-a-vis the location extent review. And again, I think there's other causes for concern that may not be visible at the commissioner level, but we're seeing sort of at the street fight level, if you will.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm getting. I'm getting that hint. So all about it. Do more outreach with you in particular, and maybe we can formalize that somehow.
Thank you.
Kelly, did you want to
I
add?
do, I'm good.
Okay. Yes, I can't imagine that we would not be thrilled to have you serve again. I mean, obviously, you take the job really seriously, and it's a really serious job. So we appreciate that approach. I thought it was interesting that under the biggest challenges, it was updating master plans with the county and the caucuses. And as you know, we're in the middle of the whole growth advisory, waiting for the recommendations from growth advisory to do that. But I agree we should be really enmeshed with you during that process. And so I think we'll pursue that conversation, see how we can get more access to you and vice versa. And then I would just say that you had written about aligning the board goals with the county master plan. So that means to me that you think the master plan doesn't reflect where we're going right now.
Again, I think part of what we're up against is we're challenged by 20-year-old documents.
Okay.
And so we've got a 2023 application, and we've got to look at it against, I mean, even the Maroon Creek extension of the, when you think about it, it's going to be really difficult from a location standpoint to say, oh, we're not approving this. But, for example, in the last couple of years, we have an emergency climate change ordinance. How does that dovetail? And so,
Okay, yeah.
specifically, how can I say no? If you're going to go from a 2-inch to an 8-inch gas pipe, that's clearly not aligned with community goals.
Right.
But if I've got to meet the PSI requirements of a homeowner over the holidays, that's health safety.
Yeah.
So you're like, Jeffrey, why didn't you vote no on that? I'm like, okay, take the ordinance that you wrote. How does that dovetail back into the community master plan or the county master plan?
Right. So you don't have the tools to say no at this point.
My point is the teeth aren't there.
Yeah.
And I think the 2-inch, 8-inch conversation got kicked back to you in some ways. But would I have done it differently? Or should planning and zoning have done it differently? Or does the land use code speak in terms of how else we could have approached this? I mean, yeah, it's a degradation of rural quality when you're trenching or boring for X miles through the county in order to quadruple gas service.
I think I know
Or
where
the
he's at.
resiliency one that went to Snowmass that was just backup, the backup. It wasn't even like
Yeah.
delivery.
Yeah.
It was resiliency. Well, what happens if this one breaks? We have to have that one. Yeah. Yeah, that was a hard one for me.
So there's a disconnect again between an emergency ordinance and then what we're approving on the ground.
Yeah.
And you can't just solve it with a glass of wine after the meeting and say, okay,
Yeah.
that's
Can't?
great.
Well, yeah, one of my passion is to figure out how to restrict development in the Crystal River Valley because of water.
Yeah.
Not because of our codes,
Yeah.
but I mean, we have to get the state water board probably involved with that and stop issuing well permits because we can't have any more well permits or we won't have a river, so I understand exactly what you're saying and I appreciate it.
And we did use the water argument to restrict home size in the Brush Creek master plan, right? If you can't sprinkler the home, you can't build that big. And that's taking the National Fire Protection Association code for residential sprinklers against the 4-inch water pipe.
Yeah.
And saying, we can't build that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just not
great.
physically possible. I'm sure a homeowner can come in and say, great, I'm putting a 200,000, whatever, the gallon
Gallon
tank
tank.
Can't get it
in
anyway.
to solve it, but again, we can't give you the PSI that you would need in order to sprinkler that home and meet those requirements. And so we can use water as a way to say, here's how we can gate growth.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Well, I think it's.
I just appreciate Jeffrey so much, and I've always appreciated our conversation, so I don't have much to ask.
Yeah, I think it's a fait accompli, and we'll let Charlotte know, and she'll let you know. but
Because we have one new
Don't hold your
applicant.
breath, I don't think that's necessary.
We do.
We do have,
And
And Chelsea's coming
Chelsea
back.
will be interviewed, and then I'm going to bring back all the renewals and new applicants on April 4th
Okay.
for you all to discuss.
Okay, great,
So in
thanks.
all fairness to the new applicant, we'll have 3 people applying for 2 positions.
Correct.
Right.
And we need to look at all of them equally and fairly, and
Yeah.
I'd say Jeffrey has a very good chance of being reappointed.
It's always good
But-
to see you.
We still have to be fair to all 3 applicants, so.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for
you
your
so
time.
much for coming in.
And next
Likewise.
time you need to bring the top best-selling books in your mind.
This is what's under my
You
pillow.
know,
It should
I'm
be
sorry, I'm
under
gonna
yours.
skip that one, I think, right now.
What is it?
for everyone on Zoom.
I'm reading Braiding Sweetgrass.
If you get through it, let me know.
It's hard to get through.
If you get through it, let me know.
I'll let you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Colorado Land Planning by Donald Elliott. So there's a citizen planning guide that's good, but if you've been doing it for 5 years, you should be reading this. It gives you the, why are we doing 1041s? Why are we doing LNEs? And it's basically everything from a state legislative perspective.
Should be required.
Danielle Steele's
reading
coming up
for
really quick in my
commissioners, I think.
No, I mean, to be honest,
They're
you wanna
gonna
know
have
what's
to release a new version after the new.
So
land use
just in case,
code.
Steve, you're on the fence, the other book that's in here is The Utopia of Rules on Technology, Stupidity, and the Secret Joys of Bureaucracy. So
Okay, so now,
I would
The
also add that
Secret
to your
Joys
reading
of
list.
I will
bureaucracy.
give you a preview of a potential legislation the governor is pushing where they're gonna change comp plans to require water availability analyses.
Yeah.
And water loss analyses, so we'll talk about that later, but.
so did you try reading Braiding Sweetgrass?
The bookmark's probably about halfway through. Yeah.
It's tough to read.
Yeah, it's not a read cover to cover.
No, it's tough to read.
Not
Thank
a
you. I
reading
thought it
bed
was
at
just
night.
me.
No,
I feel so much better now.
no, it's up there with Richard Powers. Like, have you read the Overstory? Yes, the
Oh,
first
I
100
love
pages.
it. I loved that book.
This one's a tough. I mean, there's some. It's you need a kind of a code dictionary to read some of it. Yeah. Thank you. I feel better now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Jeffrey.
Thank you. Thanks.
Appreciate it. So, our next applicant or renewal interview is online because she had a,
Hi, Amy.
hi Amy.
Hi, guys.
She had a last minute appointment, so it was easier for her to join virtually. So she is currently on the Open Space and Trails Board. We have no other applicants at this time, and she is our only renewal.
Well, hi, Amy.
Hi, guys.
Why
Nice
don't you
see
talk to us, tell a little bit about your experience on the board?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'd say it's been a fantastic experience so far. Well, so far, it's my fifth year, which is kind of crazy. Certainly when I applied, I was a little nervous that it was a 5-year appointment, and wasn't sure if that was going to be a good fit, the length of that term. But it's really flown by and has been really very rewarding in many ways. I think for me, just kind of jumping in with everything. I'm a landscape architect, so I want to say understand a lot of just kind of what's going on in the environment and in our community. I've been here since '95, so I feel like it wasn't that difficult to kind of get my feet underneath me on the board. But that being said, it does take some time to really kind of delve into all the various different pieces and parts that is the Open Space and Trails Board and such. But I've just found it very rewarding working with a fantastic team of staff, as well as a really great board that has a lot of experience in the valley and comes from kind of different walks of life, if you will, that I think really helps our board just have good perspectives on kind of what we're doing and where we're heading with whether it's trails or ag leasing or the conservation easements.
Okay, anybody have a question for her? Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, great, Amy, great to see you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I'm so grateful you're on that board, and I can't believe it's been 5 years. It doesn't seem like it at all. So I'm looking at your so anyway, yeah, just glad you're there. You provide great balance, well, an attempt at balance with all those guys. So that's great. I wanted to ask you, managing public opinion on prioritization of funding. What in top 3 issues? Can you dive into that a little bit for me? Trying to understand that.
Sure. Well, I think that oftentimes conservation easements are not seen as a valuable way to spend money. At least with a number of people that I know. A lot of the people that I kind of know and that question kind of what we're doing and stuff. They want to see access, they want to see trails, they want to see amenities. They don't necessarily think and feel necessarily that, a view plane is worth $10 to $15 million of kind of taxpayer money. to be spent. So that's I think where that comment is coming from.
I get that. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your. I appreciate the entire board's understanding of that, and I'm just wondering, maybe our next step is to try to figure out what we can do to help, and maybe it is managing or just enlightening our population about the value of places where people don't always go.
Yeah, and I'd say the board has actually helped me understand that a little bit more as well, because I was perhaps a little bit more of the ilk of like, yeah, I want access, I want to get there, I want to do things, and it's not always about that.
If I could for a minute, Francie, I just wanted to say I had a conversation with our district forester, Scott Fitzwilliams, and his biggest concern is the effects of development, tourism, and recreation on fragile ecosystems. And I think what open space tries to do with some of these conservation easements that don't include access is to protect some of these places, because as we know, recreation can fragment habitat in ways that we don't even know until the wildlife population depletes enough that it's noticeable. So it's a complex issue, and hopefully we'll be learning more about that.
Yeah, you're singing my song there, Greg. So, yeah, Amy, you're aware of how I feel about trails compared to open space, I'm pretty sure, after all our meetings.
Yep.
And one of the things I noticed in your application was nothing about the thing of trails or open space, but it was about sort of amplifying your own voice in your next term. And I think that would be great, because I do recognize that sometimes when you're on Zoom and everybody else is in the room in our joint meetings, we don't hear a lot from you. So I would love it if that were to happen in your next term. So, yeah, Patty.
Absolutely. And the last meeting, I was definitely not feeling well. And but yeah, no, I think that's definitely my goal, is to get a little more in the mix.
Amy and I had an opportunity to spend some time together. Her son is a member of the Boy Scout troop who was working on Veterans Park. And actually, I spent more time in the building speaking with your husband, who's very supportive of your being on this board, as I am very supportive of your being on this board. And yes, I agree with Francie. We can't wait to hear more from you. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kelly.
Hi, Amy. Great to see you. I'm wondering, it's been 5 years since since the voters reauthorized the open space and trails tax and made some changes, I think, to really include and incorporate biodiversity considerations in open space planning and funding. Are there other things that you feel like might need tweaking there with the authorities of open space to more successfully implement the program?
Ooh.
And the answer can be no. I don't have any at the top of my mind right now, but I just wanted to ask if you had been chewing over something.
No, I think it's a valid question. I think that we have been trying to incorporate some of those additional features into some of our different management plans and things like that. So I think that we're well aware of some of those pieces and parts, and that we're really trying to incorporate them into everything that we do. So I don't see, I guess, any off the cuff piece or directive that would help us do that. But I do think that we are all on the board aware of those different moving parts, and are trying to incorporate those into kind of what we do.
Well, thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, Amy, thank you so much for serving for 5 years. I know I served on the Weed Advisory Board for 10 years. It's easy, those years slip by quickly, and if you're enjoying it, you don't really notice the years that much. Sometimes I have a conflict in my mind about what the open space and trails can do in terms of trails. Some trails are more for recreational use, but there are some which are really for transportation. Trails that would be alongside Highway 82, for instance, or along 133, which can be seen as a viable transportation alternative to using the highway. And what's your thoughts about the use of OST funds for building those kind of trails, which perhaps could be funded by CDOT or by, some other funding mechanism? They are trails, they are public trails, and yet they're part of the transportation system also. So where should the funding for those kind of trails come from? And should OST be participating in those, building the trails, maintaining them, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that open space and trails should participate in that. I think whether it's a commuter trail or just a recreational trail, it's a trail and it gets people outside, whether it's outside next to a highway or outside, more remotely. So I do think that we should always look for additional partnerships so that we can all further our monies, from various pots and different, funders and stakeholders. I think that's always, an important piece just in general. But yeah, I think that open space and trails, that is part of our kind of charge, or at least I feel that it's part of our charge, and it is getting people outside and moving and from point A to point B is not a bad thing, versus just a loop or a recreational deal. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Amy? Well, thank you so much, Amy, and thank
Thank
you for the
you.
last 5 years. And
Good to see you, Amy.
Yes, likewise.
And
Thanks
more
for
coming.
doing the Zoom thing. I know it
all
can
right,
a
we'll
little
be in
funky.
touch.
All
Thank you.
right, sounds good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So our next renewal interview is with Dr. Tom Kurt. And he is here in person. So Board of Health is where Dr. Kurt is serving. And we have 2 renewing members on this board, Dr. Kurt and Linda Vieira, who's going to be with us later virtually. And then we also have Greg and Patty.
Oh, yeah.
Who need to be reappointed. We
Do you
won't
have to
make
interview Greg and I again for
I
that?
thought we did that in January.
I think we did. And Greg, I'm supporting you for Chair Greg too, by the way. Greg does a great job chairing.
Good.
Thanks, Patty.
So, like I said, Linda will be joining us later. And that will take care of our Board of Health renewals.
Well, thank you. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
And thank you for your years of service, particularly during those particularly hard years. And I'd like to hear from you where you stand on the Board of Health and your commitment to it and what you see coming up. Your application was great, by the way.
Well, we've gotten through the COVID epidemic, fortunately, and that took a bit of courage because at our critical meeting, we had 1,100 people on the Zoom at the time that we closed down restaurants for 2.5 weeks. And I received a lot of emails and calls during that time as well.
I'll bet you did.
So fortunately, I'm a military veteran, and I've been through things that take a little bit of bravo. I served in the Air Force Reserves at the Air Force Academy and then with the Wyoming Air Guard as a flight surgeon. And talking about that, there are lots of things coming up in Pitkin County currently. We have the situation with psychedelics that's been approved by the voters through the state legislature, and Aspen could be a kind of a tourist haven for people flying in because Colorado will be one of the few states besides Arizona where that can be obtained, and be prepared because there will be entrepreneurs who will be pushing that kind of a service. We also learned from the COVID epidemic that testing wastewater at the Aspen Consolidated Sewer District as well as in Snowmass gives you a clue ahead of time with viruses. It does because you detect the virus in the stool about 2 weeks really before the cases incubate, and then another week that takes for it to be reported. So wastewater gives you a kind of a head start, particularly at present where a lot of people are doing home testing and you don't have the testing being performed in public facilities where you get input from those kinds of results. So I can see the wastewater being an interesting lesson that we need to continue with other viruses, which can be performed for the flu, mpox, drugs of abuse, etc. We also have learned a little bit about the airport. I served on the airport vision committee with experience for the new terminal, where that's a kind of a emergency in itself, separate from the runways. I'm serving now on the Aspen Fly Right group with Amory Levins with the studies that are being performed. I've served on the senior council for Pickens County for 2 terms. And I've learned how to deal with the senior population, of which I'm one with that. I just was reappointed for my 5th term with the Aspen Wheeler Opera House. And that's been an important lesson, too, of how to deal, keeping the flavor of Aspen in our town and county, despite all of the tourists that are coming in to enjoy what's here as well. So I'm open to questions about this. My background is that I had my pre-med at Notre Dame, went to Kansas to medical school, went to Harvard for my master's in public health. I think I'm the only person in the county who is certified by preventive medicine in public health. I served as a resident fellow and faculty at the University of Colorado Medical Center, then went to Dallas to help found the Regional Poison Center there, where I'm still on that clinical faculty. And I'm on the board of the Colorado School of Public Health. And what I've done with the Board of Health is not just to attend meetings, but to provide information, if you know, and if Greg knows, in between meetings, because I get emails from CDC, the World Health Organization, FDA. I forward those bits of information, which I think are pertinent to public health, to Jordana, who then distributes them. It's not business, it's information to the Board of Health and for the county. I've also pursued better integrating CHS or community health services in the total picture of public health. And I'm well acquainted now with Logan Hood and with what's being done to integrate those services. So I'm open to questions.
All right, well, we are lucky to have you, and Greg's been waiting to ask you a question.
Right, thank you, Dr. Kirk, great to see you. I'm sorry I'm not there in person for this. Oh, I see multiples here of me. I just wanted to say, you reminded me that when the possibility of detection of COVID in the sewer first came up, I think you definitely alerted us to that maybe months ahead of when it was actually implemented. And I know you and I both felt some frustration. Maybe you're used to it, but often when a new development like that comes along, it certainly is great to be out in front of it and understand it. But then there's a huge effort taken to convince everybody that it's worth pursuing. And it actually did take longer than I guess either of us would have liked. But now it's the standard, I think. And thanks in part to you and your efforts and being so good as a lookout for issues like that and so well informed. So I can just say I'm really grateful that you're on that board as probably the only non-health accredited healthcare provider individual on that entire board. Of course, I'm extremely grateful, and I think you've contributed an awful lot, and hoping you will continue. I don't know if there's a question in that other than just to highlight that one observation, but Dr. Kirk brings us this sort of information on a regular basis, and it's always worth reading and disseminating, and I think we're doing that fairly often now.
Thanks, Greg. Did you hear the story on NPR about the women who initiated the study of the sewer samples? There was an interview with these two women who were from very different places. One was from India, I think, and another one was an American. And they had started the whole using the sewer to find the pathogens in the communities. It was about 2 weeks ago, I think, on NPR. You can probably find it in the archives. It was really interesting.
I've heard of that. I didn't read that directly.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are finding that that is an important area to further investigate.
Yeah. Patty?
Yeah, real quick, Tom, I always love getting your emails forwarded on to us. He provides the Board of Health with great information, invaluable information. Do you still have any association with the ATSDR, which is the Agency for Toxic Disease and Substance Review?
I have been a consultant to ATSDR in writing some of their documents, like trichloroethylene. I am not doing that now, although I have accessed their website is wonderful because there are about 400 chemicals which have wonderful references and entire histories that are updated on a regular basis. ATSDR is the Agency for Toxic Substances Disease Registry that's located in Atlanta with CDC, and it's an EPA-funded agency in conjunction with CDC.
Yeah, Tom and I go way back. Tom and I did a presentation to the community about Smuggler Superfund site, which was really a great experience for me, and so I really enjoy sitting on the Board of Health with Tom, and I can't imagine a Board of Health without you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Steve?
Yeah, Tom, thanks for serving on the Board of Health. I have a couple of questions. One would be, can we use the testing of the wastewater for trying to detect any new things coming along that we might not be aware that we have? I don't know how the technology works, but our family in Alaska they've had RSV in the last few months, have had RSV and COVID and now norovirus.
Oh, geez.
They're just getting like these bombarded by viruses, and I imagine in our community with people coming from all over the world, we probably are being bombarded by a lot of different viruses that we might not even be aware of. But can we use the testing to determine that and maybe head off another pandemic?
Well, I have the good fortune of having a niece who's a wastewater engineer in Canada, and so she has forwarded references to me that I distributed shortly after the COVID epidemic started. And frankly, I was sort of the first person that presented this before it was really implemented and pushed forward. The testing of wastewater, and in fact, I think I'm the only person who requested a tour and toured the Aspen wastewater plant. I've physically been there, seen how they perform the samples, and I challenge anyone else to do that, because you will be surprised there's very little odor that is emitted because of the biologic system that they have to break down without using a lot of chlorine. But the collections are usually sent to CDPHE, which is the Colorado Department of Health, and it's just limited only by the testing system. There are laboratories that can literally test for anything, depending upon the sample as it's collected and where it's sent. So,
It's evolving.
So do you have to specify what you're looking for so they do the right tests on the sample?
yes. For instance, Shigella, which is a bacteria that causes dysentery, recently has been detected and tested in some systems. Poliovirus has been tested for in New York wastewater systems for people from Israel have come to New York. So it depends upon the locality and the testing system.
Mm-hmm. So I presume it would be expensive. They can't test for everything. You want to have a reasonable reason to be testing for specific things then.
There is no labogram that tests for anything. You have to be specific. But nonetheless, there's a certain advantage when you're testing taking a blood specimen or nasal specimen, a person has to sign a consent. You don't have to get a consent for wastewater because everyone
Is wasted.
contributes without a consent. So that's a convenience.
So, one more question, looking ahead to our next pandemic, which I presume will happen sooner or later, maybe not in any of our watch, I hope not, but what, do you have any good words of advice for the decision makers, like those on the Board of Health and the county commissioners and whatnot, for heading off another pandemic, or what to do when we are faced with one?
Well, we're having our field day in May. Perhaps if I'm reappointed, I could give a greater report at that time. But there are many other ways that Aspen and Pitkin County can be involved in improving the public health. And fortunately, we had a public health department in the works, which was implemented, as you know, in 2018, before the COVID epidemic occurred, or pandemic occurred.
Okay.
Okay, Kelly?
Hi, thank you. We're very lucky to have you. I'm wondering if you could dig in a little bit on the issues that you see facing the board. You had mentioned sort of the psilocybin tourism, but I wondered if there was more related to other public health issues from the tourist population that you're concerned about, and then what environmental problems due to climate change are at the forefront for you.
Well, really, the sky is the limit in all the ramifications of public health, and people are beginning to learn how important that, which is a field of preventive medicine, because of the importance because of COVID occurring. So we're seeing more attention and training with that. It's interesting that people involved in public health, like myself, have a longer life expectancy than other physicians, because perhaps we learn and practice about implementing things that provide you with a longer life. And so we could start with cardiopulmonary rehabilitation, which is being performed at Aspen Valley Hospital, and expanding on that kind of a concept. We can expand upon making the tourists more interested in health as they arrive at the airport, with things flashing on the screen that currently are mostly, I think, advertisements or other public announcements. Really, there is no limit in what could be performed. I'm interested in also seeing this Colorado School of Public Health having some presence on the western slope. The western slope is sort of partly neglected. And so I've been working on that as well.
That's a really good idea.
When you're speaking about longevity, it reminds me of a conversation I had with my neighbor. He's 91, and he goes out walking 3 times a day every day, or cross-country skiing, depending on what the ground is like. And we were talking about the problems in France, about Macron raising the retirement age to 64 from 62. And so my neighbor was saying that, yeah, well, when they did it here in 1965, or whenever they did it, and made it the age 65, no, it was before 1965. And when they made the retirement age 65, it was a pretty good bet back then, because most people didn't make it that far. And then he was saying that now that we have such longevity, we're not going back.
Well, we've gone back a bit. Sadly, with the Omicron variant, 92% of the deaths with COVID occur in the over 65 population. So the risks for COVID are age, obesity, and obesity is an epidemic in the United States at this time. Colorado and Aspen are sort of an exception to that, but particularly in the southeastern states and in all states, the percentage of obesity is increasing. I'm interested in seeing people more physically active, not just in strength, but in physical activities. And then the other 2 big categories are diabetes 2, adult onset diabetes, which is often associated with obesity and can be reversed or lessened with weight loss. And lastly, hypertension on medications. So those are the four big areas. Of course, outside of that, we're interested in cancer factors, and when you're looking at cancer and cancer prevention, I think we're learning more about the what's called the immunohistochemistry of cancer and how you can potentially prevent cancer by knowing the particular genetics of individuals.
Right.
There's genetic counseling, as you know, in most university hospitals now, where they'll test you for several hundred of those and get proper counseling. And the precedent for that would be the BRCA1 and 2 tests.
Right.
Okay.
I did that.
Now, Greg?
For your mom.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Kurt, yeah, I did, I was reminded that at the Aspen Fly Right presentation, you spoke early on just about air quality and your concerns about that. And my feeling was there's kind of a disconnect in that I know our Airport Advisory Board and Public Health actually are doing some work on that. And I'm just wondering, how much do you know about what we've been doing and within the county and the Airport Advisory Board in studying air quality at the airport, and if you if anything you can share about that, because the implication that Amory makes is that this isn't being done until he announces that that it needs to be, and so it's a little frustrating because I know we do have people working on that, but I'd like to hear your perspective.
Well, I'm a scientist who wants to research and provide information from that research. And my precedent for that was when I was at the University of Colorado Medical Center in Denver. Came back from Boston, we did studies through the emergency department, which is at that time was located about 6 blocks from National Jewish, where there's a camp station that measures the air pollutants. And we showed on days of higher air pollution, there were more people coming in with shortness of breath and chest pain to the emergency room. So I'm interested in demonstrating those factors. I'm not interested in taking a political position on one or the other. I'm a facilitator of information and proper collection of that information. Now in Aspen, we do have a problem with particulate matter. If you'll look at our air studies each morning, it will sometimes say 30, 40, 45, but if you look at seacoast cities, like in Miami, that will be 3 or 5. And the big difference is in particulate matter, or PM, which is measured as PM10, which is a little bit bigger than bacteria, or PM2.5, which is bacterial size, or even PM1. Those factors can be associated with increased cardiovascular risks and pulmonary risks. So I'm interested in seeing the PM on Main Street being reduced. If you've driven along behind raft of buses, somehow I would like to see innovation in preventing that cloud of dust from being part of our exposures. When I drive my car on Main Street, I'll turn the air system on recirculate because I don't want to inhale that particulate matter. I think something could be done to partially control that.
Right.
As well
Thank
as
you.
particulate matter from the backup of traffic from the airport in the morning.
Greg,
What I was getting at is perhaps there's an opportunity to get Dr. Kirk with the Airport Advisory Board so he can help observe and inform the way we look at air quality. Thank you.
Betsy, just real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom and I, Dr. Kurt and I worked on that. That was part of the Superfund site, was PM10 issues, when the city of Aspen was designated as being out of compliance. So I've done a lot of homework on PM10, PM2.5, PM1, and speciations of where our particulates are coming from, which is very complicated to try and figure it out. It's not just from the deserts in Utah, it's from deserts sometimes around the world. So we have a tough scenario here being in a box canyon. So I think Greg's right that involving Tom and the Board of Health more closely aligned with some of our airport advisory health and air quality kind of studies is a good idea.
Yes, certainly the wildfires that are west of us,
Yeah.
particularly from California, are sources of PM also, as well as other combustion chemicals.
Well, thank you, Tom, for coming in. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your service. And as
Thanks,
Kelly
Tom.
said,
Thank you
we're
for
really
inviting
lucky
me.
to have you.
Thank
And,
you.
Charlotte will
Dr.
be in
Kurt.
touch.
Yeah. Oh,
So Charlotte, I have one thing I want to bring up from a previous one.
okay.
On the OST board, you have Howie Mallory as his term expiring in 2023. I think it's supposed to say 2024.
Yes, you are right. I am making progress in getting the new database here. So, yes.
Because you had mentioned only Amy was up for renewal, but
That
then I
is
saw
correct.
on
And-
Howie's that were set 2023.
Thank you.
So I
for
just
that.
wanted to make sure we got the right number there.
Good
Yep.
catch, Steve. That's
Thank
amazing.
you, Steve. I will make that correction.
Okay, thanks.
Back to you,
Okay.
Charlotte.
So, we actually have, you guys probably know that a couple weeks ago we had a retirement party for Kathy Chandler and Barbara Smith, who had been a longtime member of the library board. So today we have a new applicant, Heather Kendrick. And she has applied. There's no other applicants. I did mention in the AIS that we do have two other folks, Anna Scott and, Elizabeth. Elizabeth is renewing and Ashley Connolly is renewing. And Anna Scott is an alternate that is interested in moving up to that regular
It's going to be my
position.
question.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind as you interview Heather.
Hello.
Well, hi, Heather. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I can't wait to hear about America's Got Talent. But in the meantime,
So funny.
tell us about your interest in the library board.
Sure. So I moved to the Valley in 2018 to take on the role of Education and Community Manager at the Aspen Music Festival and School. And we work closely with the library in a variety of capacities, both Pickens County and the Basalt Regional Library, as well as run programming throughout the Valley at Garfield County Libraries as well. But it's such a joy of mine to be able to work with Genevieve and her team. We run a number of summer programs for young ones, for little ones, Tunes and Tales, the summer music series where music festival students play over at the library, as well as I've worked with Nathan a fair amount and really enjoy that, as well as our archives are at the library from the music festival and school as well. So we are there often running programming, and I'm also an active reader, kind of a walking PSA, I feel, for the library anyways, especially during COVID. And I recently got my master's in education at the Harvard School of the Graduate School of Education. And so I'm very committed both to the work that we're doing musically and in arts organizations and working with local schools throughout the Roaring Fork Valley, but also as a teacher myself and as an arts administrator. So excited about what the library is currently doing and would love to be more involved in this capacity.
Okay. Patty.
Yeah, your resume, I mean, look at all the places and things you've done. It was
Yeah,
very
it's so
exciting to
cool.
read. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Thank you for applying. But, I think having somebody with such a musical background with what we do for music at our library is a bonus for us. So I'm excited. And yeah, I was going to ask about moving one of the alternates up. So do we have any other applicants for?
No.
Okay, that's so hopefully we'll be saying welcome on board. But we'll have to wait to see what everybody else says. Thanks, Heather.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I loved reading your resume. It was really fun.
Thank you.
I'm sort of curious, what does the library board do? I mean, I know what people who work in the library do, but what does the library board do?
Well, I attended a meeting just a couple weeks ago now, so I'm very novice at learning that as well. But
Yeah, come on up, Genevieve.
yeah.
She's going to help you out here.
Of course. Well, from what I saw, and Genevieve can please correct me if I'm wrong, but is very much so involved in looking at the direction of the library about strategic initiatives, a number of conversations around the start of a snowmass satellite and incorporating more of the library's presence across the county as opposed just to, within our Aspen area. In addition to some building things that we were talking about, all the logistics.
Our library board represents the community and brings issues from the community to us in an advisory capacity. They help administer our budget, which then comes to you for approval. They hire and fire the county librarian. They help us adopt our bylaws and our policy. So many things. And we really love having relationships with other organizations in the community, like the music festival. We have a representative from Aspen Words on our board. We have former journalists, former teachers. So it's really a great a team as far as preserving our cultural heritage in that way. So that's why we are so happy that Heather applied.
Great, thank you. Okay, so America's Got Talent.
I didn't prepare you all people.
Yeah, I'm a violinist by trade, and so I still play a lot locally, both in classical capacities and with some local DJs. But when I was at the University of Michigan, I was recruited to play for a DJ violin band called New Classica, and we played across the state, and I actually competed and won Miss Michigan. I went to compete at Miss America also, playing electric violin with kind of DJ backing tracks from my time working with that band. And we decided to go to America's Got Talent, got recruited and a call to go out and do it. And that was not necessarily my interest, but no one's going to say no to that. So I went with the band and we had a great experience. We got Simon Cowell told us he thought we were talented, and some of those other judges gave us interesting feedback, and we didn't end up making it onto the show, but we were in the opening credits of the whole season 11. So
Oh,
I'll
cool.
take that. Didn't have to sign away my life.
That's
on
fun.
that contract.
Well, Miss Michigan, like there's a lot of people from Michigan around here. That's quite an accolade. I'm married to one, Yeah.
Thank you. Well,
Not a Miss Michigan.
Me
You're
too,
married to
Kelly.
a Michigan.
Michigander.
So do you play in the same sort of genre as that woman who's quite famous now, whose name I can't remember, but she goes all over the stage, she's like wild on her violin. Is that
Lindsay
kind of what
Sterling.
you do?
Well, I can. I wouldn't say that it is necessarily my total claim to fame, but I can do it and happy to do it. If that's what, it's interesting how many people call wanting an electric violinist that'll dance around. I can do it. So
That's cool.
That is so much fun.
So-
The next holiday party at the library, we know who's
There we
going to do the
go.
entertainment.
All right.
Perfect.
Exciting.
We got
Yeah.
it.
That'd be great.
Well, to follow along on the same train of thought we're on right now, did you happen to see the Choral Society production this past weekend?
I did not, but I heard it was fabulous.
Because it was like two
Fabulous.
violinists and a viola player all over the stage. They had memorized the entire piece, so they didn't rely on their written music. And that was intentional. And a lot of the singers too were moving around, so it was like a new MO for the Choral Society to do that.
Well, I heard it was fabulous, and the string players, there's not that many of us in the Valley, and most of them teach for our education programs as well. So all of them that were in that string section are on our teaching team at the music festival in
Yeah.
school, and they were so proud of that work, and
Yeah.
it was fabulous.
And I just wanted to point out the kind of the connection between music and different forms of art and education. And I'll use my daughter Robin as an example. She was an art teacher in the state of Alaska, teaching in native villages, and she's a banjo player. So she always had her banjo with her, and she would be teaching Eskimo kids how to play the banjo, at the same time as teaching them to retain their language and learn all the things their natural science and their language skills and everything. We're all tied together with music and art, and all the rest of the curriculum is so tied together that you really can't detach them. And so I see the library as a center for education and resources, and so I see a natural connection between music and libraries that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And we look pretty closely at that too as we develop programming between music and literacy with the children's librarians. There's just so much that we can tap into for that sort of potential, and people are excited for it. So I agree.
Greg?
You call me, sorry?
Yes, I did.
Oh, great,
Bradley.
thank you. Heather, thank you for coming in. I'm sorry I can't be there today in person. I just saw a statistic recently that just kind of shocks me every time I see it. They say 33% of high school graduates never read another book for the rest of their lives. 42% of college grads never read another book after college. 57% of new books are not read to completion.
Oh.
70% of U.S. adults have not been in a bookstore the last 5 years. Perhaps that means maybe they go to libraries. 80% of U.S. families did not read a book in the last year. And I'm just wondering, how do we keep our kids engaged? And I have to say, music has been a big thing for us in our family. Music education. Our children went through Suzuki program with Heidi when she was here, but she's left now, and I'm hoping you can help us fill in the gap. My kids are graduating, but I know music education is so important to help with literacy and the importance of reading and understanding. So I think this is really an important board you're joining, and I think you're extremely qualified, and it seems like you're tuned in. Anything you want to add?
No pun intended.
That's
That's
great. Thank you so much. Well, those statistics are so challenging, and I think something that does really ignite and is a good catalyst for us as leaders in this work. That it's similarly, I think, to music education. My goal as I go into schools and run programming throughout our valley is not necessarily to refine a young violinist to attend the music festival in school. If that happens, that's a huge win and that's a wonderful thing. But one of our goals as teachers is to provide wonderful, engaging, exciting spaces for kids to love music. And I think that's also, that applies to literacy, that we want students to feel like they can come to the library, that they feel in love with a book, that they're inspired, that they want to engage with that sort of curriculum, and that it's a way they can continue their learning throughout the rest of their lives. So I think continuing to promote what we're doing at the library, to be engaged, to be in schools, to be talking to students and families, and creating a culture around having music playing in the home or having books and those sorts of materials accessible, and even more accessible than their phones or something like that, is just really important, and something that I just can't imagine my life without music or without books or without being outside and all these other wonderful things. But it's certainly, I think, a fight that we have to keep fighting, and it's great that there's people like Genevieve that are leading that fight.
I wanted to say also, I just read recently, I don't know how recently, the archive from the Aspen Music Festival of all the recordings from the Institute at the Music Festival for so many decades have been, are they digitized or are they accessible in the library? I thought that was very exciting, and I'm really grateful. I was able to contribute to the recordings at the music festival many years ago, and I'd like to think that the recordings I worked on are being used and listened to this day. But what a database we've accumulated just with our own local music. But thank you for that. I'm excited to see what you all come up with.
Well, and I think a lot of that is done by Nathan at the library.
Yeah, that's Nathan's project. He's working on the digitization of the music festival recordings. We do have the full archive on CD, but we don't know how long that will last, that technology, so we're trying to get it loaded into the cloud and available to music festival students and professors and anybody that's local.
Something with that too that we're kind of keeping our fingers crossed could be down the pipeline at the music festival and school is that we're talking with Michael Miracle at Ski Co about their Art in Unexpected Places collaboration and seeing if we could at some point take some of those digitized recordings from way back in the day and see if we could do a sound installation on some of the mountains so that you could be skiing through and hear the bronze recording in the tent or something like that
That's
from
really fun.
back in the day. So.
I like it just downtown if you're walking through the mall and you just hear it. When we don't have live musicians, that would be another great opportunity. Or at Heron Park by the playground and something in the summertime.
We'll work on it. We'll take it back.
Great idea.
Let us know.
Well, thank you for your application
Thank
and
you.
everything
Yeah,
you've done
thrilled.
up to now, and hopefully we'll do in the future.
Yeah, we've
Very
loved, I
nice
have
to
two
meet you.
little kids. We've loved doing some of the summer programming with the music festival, and we usually take our kids on the Sunday rehearsals because they're a little loud and crazy. So the performances aren't the best time for them, but the rehearsals are always wonderful.
Oh, good. I love to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And my dad was actually a county commissioner in Port Huron, Michigan,
Oh,
back in
okay.
the day. So he was excited I was coming to. Thank you.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks, Genevieve.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
See you on the bus.
So,
Do
I'm
we
not
have-
sure if we have Linda,
Yeah, she's
I
here.
know- is she? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
great,
Linda's
great.
there.
She's hung in with us.
I know she was trying to juggle her appointments at Public Health, so. She is the other renewing member on Board of Health, so I will let you all ask her any questions.
Oh, we hear you. We hear her, right? Is that?
I'm not sure why you're not seeing me. I raised my hand.
Linda, if you want to accept the invite to be promoted to panelist, we could at least see you. If you're
Sorry, I
comfortable with
can't
that.
hear. Having trouble. Did that work?
Yes, if
Can you
you.
hear me?
Gotta turn her video on.
Yeah, if you don't mind turning your video on.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Turned it on. Can you hear me?
We can hear
Yeah.
you, we just can't see you.
But we know you. We know you.
Sorry, I'm at Community Health, and I had them set this up for me, and
Wonder if the computer itself has its little camera off at the top.
I have it on video, but for some reason it's not working. I'm sorry.
Is there a chance that you maybe have a sticker over your camera?
See if I can get someone to help me. Hang on a second.
So what about the Geraldine Brooks?
I have this to block the little light that's on there,
Yeah.
but that's the camera.
Okay, great.
Light would drive me nuts.
He said, the thing I got today said there's still tickets.
I used to be a member. I don't know why I stopped getting stuff.
We can still interview. Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Okay.
I have a cold, I'm sorry.
Now we can we can see you and sort of hear you. It's a little bit blurry, your voice, but it's great video, and so welcome. Thank you for showing up to talk with us. And
Thank you.
why don't you tell us a little bit about being on the Board of Health and why you want to continue doing that?
This was my first experience as a board member, and I've never been on a board before. I've been here for 46 years and in practice, first as a nurse midwife and now as an advanced nurse practitioner in women's health. And me that was on the board and if asked if I'd be interested, and I am interested. However, initially it was for 4 meetings a year, and then COVID hit. So it was very interesting experience to have been with the Board of Health through that experience. And I've learned quite a bit. I'm a listener than a speaker, so I'd like to work on that in the future. And I am interested always in maternal child health. I have my master's from Yale University in maternal child health. And so that's always interesting of mine. And I would continue to be interested in that aspect.
Hey, do we have questions for her? Yeah, Patty.
Hi, Linda. Patty Clapper.
Hey, Patty.
It's always good to see you, and I have to say that watching you grow into the Board of Health has been very interesting. Linda contributes, so the rest of the board knows. She contributes on multiple levels, but your background in women's health and maternal child health is very valuable to the Board of Health, and I so appreciate the time you put in, and especially during COVID when our meetings were a lot. And so now that we can hopefully get back on a regular schedule, we can have time to address a broader range of issues, and I know you'll be excited about that. So I'm excited that you want to continue on the Board of Health, and I'm excited to see you here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Patty. It was something that I had to think about because of the extent of time that it did take with COVID, but hopefully beyond us. And I am anxious to learn about futuristically, what did we learn through the experience of COVID and through all aspects, and so that futuristically, as Steve was asking, what did we learn and what can we apply in the future with that? And there's other aspects that I am interested in as far as mental health in our community. I think is a big aspect, especially the mental health of our children and adolescents, and opioid usage in our in that community, in that area, and also it's come to my attention lately about the PFAS, which are the substances, chemicals that pollute our streams and waters, and I had no idea about it, and I have that are avid fishermen, both ice fishermen and also non-ice fishermen in the summer, and we eat a lot of fish. And so that really has struck my interest. And you know, those ingredients are in everything and never go away, basically, and are in, you know, dental floss to cookware and firefighting foams, and so that's another area of interest. And I am very thankful for the people that are on the board and expertise, and look forward to learning more and being a participant in the future of so.
All right, Greg?
Yeah, great. Hi, Linda. Thank you. I have a cold also, so I'm isolating today. I'm not actually in Lugano, but sometimes I wish I was. I really appreciate it. I wanted to say, just, you know, having Linda on the board it's like, you know, you're part of a board that makes me feel so comfortable when I'm chairing it, because I know I have such an incredible expertise, and when I think that you probably helped birth a majority, or at least a significant number of the adults in this community who are still here today, you know, you had a hand in the birth of so many people, and in the caring for women's health in our community for so long. It's great to have you there, and I think of you as somebody who was very calm and quiet under pressure when we did have you know, what we went through with COVID, and I'm really grateful that you were there with us every step of the way. One of the things I'm glad to read in your application is that you know, you've kind of been through the learning curve, and you know, you're building self-confidence, and so I'm really looking forward to your participation going forward. I think that there's a good chance we're going to reappoint you. And after we go through the process, but I really look forward to having more feedback. And I can say that Jordana and I and Krista, Dr. Giesel, met. We had a meeting on the board retreat that's coming up. And one of the suggestions leading up to it is that, I think Jordana asked, how can we get all the board members to participate more and put in what their 2 cents worth or what concerns them. So I want to encourage you to participate in that. And I think that, we might all be getting more queries from the public health director as we go into meetings, just so the things that you're interested in, then we'll have an opportunity to come out. And maybe that'll also help us in our round robins when we try to open the floor for discussion about various topics. And I think sometimes we're so worn out after COVID that nobody wanted to say anything more. But now, as things calm down a bit, maybe we'll have more opportunity to explore what you've been expressed as your interest.
Thank you. Yes.
Kelly.
Hi, Linda. Thank you for your service, and I'm grateful you want to continue. I'm wondering, what is the state of women's health in Pickens County, given your lens?
I think that the health, depending upon the age group, really, it's excellent. We have, excellent care in our community. We have active women. There's not as much, hardly at all, smoking in any of the patients. It's very rare. Women, it's probably more smoking marijuana, which they're unaware of. That smoking marijuana is as much as, if not more severe than smoking cigarettes. And so, depending upon the age group and the elderly, it really has struck me of late that elderly women primarily have Medicare as their health insurance, and there aren't too many caregivers that actually take Medicare, and that concerns me. There are also, as couples come in, women who have a partner, that what happens in older age that we're totally unaware of as younger people, and the consequences of what we've done in the past. And there's a lot of chronic obstructive lung disease from past smoking. There's heart disease from genetics and past smoking. And there's, so it depends upon what age group you're talking about. And I see the age group from anywhere from teenagers. I work one day at Community Health and have done so for 45 years. So I've seen my adolescents grow into old women like me. So it's very interesting to observe that and experience that. And the older women unaware of partners aging and what that entails, and if they become incapacitated, how their life changes, and all their aspirations for old age go by the wayside because of it. So there's a lot of mental health aspects in the elderly group, as well as physical aspects that could be addressed.
Thank you. That's so helpful and illuminating. I appreciate your insight.
And Linda, I had a question about, this is Francie. I had a question about what you wrote in your application about where do seniors go? Like what happens to them? And I'm wondering if you have, or what would be your aspirational picture of how we could address that?
I was recently approached by a board member in board joining their board, and I really felt like I couldn't do both. But we see our seniors, and as they age, physically, a lot of them hated as far as their lungs and the ability to oxygenate their bodies, and they have to move to a lower altitude, and so that's an issue. And also, if they don't and choose to stay here and are healthy enough to stay here, it's a problem with where do we take care of them. And we have, you know, the Wickham Terrace, but that's all we have, and that's limited as far as numbers of people. And as I age, and you know, I go to all the, I don't go to all the activities, but when I go to activities and I see more white-haired people, you know, it does concern me. Where do they go, and where am I going to go? Because I'm definitely as well. So, yeah, to see more work done and what can we do for the elderly population in our community.
Thank you. Do we have other questions for Linda today? Yeah, Steve?
Not so much a question, but just comments. Thank you, Linda, for serving on the Board of Health. And I would urge you to be bold when you are at your board meetings and not hold anything back if you have ideas. We created the board with a lot of diversity of, you know, expertise in many different areas, and so whatever expertise you have, that you know things that other people on the board don't know, and I just urge you to, you know, feel free to express your thoughts and new ideas, and all based on your lifetime experience and your experience in the community. That's what makes boards really work well, when everybody on the board participates and really gets engaged. So I urge you to do that.
Do you have any questions for us, Linda? Do you have any questions for us? Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, there she's
Oh, she's got patience.
Okay, well, we will be in touch with you, and thank you so much for
Thanks,
your
Linda.
service to
Thank
date
you.
and your willingness to
Thank you.
continue serving.
Okay, so
Well, thank you, Charlotte.
you all get to see
Charlotte.
me again next week. And I have, I think, 4 more interviews. And then I will bring back all renewals for decision on April 4th, and you can ask questions and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, John.
Hi.
We are
How's everyone
scheduled to
doing
take
there?
a break. Do you guys want to take a break?
Use the restroom quickly, but can come
I
back
think we're
shortly.
going to take a quick 5-minute break, John. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're almost finished for the day. It's Tuesday, March 21st. This is the work session for the BOCC, and we are ready to discuss future agendas. So, John, do you have anything for us?
All right, I do. Give me just a sec. I got caught on the phone there.
Sorry about that.
So I have a few items on future agendas. Just a note, Kelly had asked for time to hear from Roaring Fork Conservancy, and just wanted to note that Lisa and Lisa, we're gonna have to come up with a nickname there, I think.
Lisa,
Are going to be coordinating a presentation in the near future, and once we have a date on that, we'll get back with the board. Also, just wanted to note, Greg had forwarded an email on an event on the 23rd. I think that came through Auden Schendler. We have noticed it on this week's agenda because we do believe that at least more than 3 or more of you are gonna be there.
I didn't see anywhere to register to that for that. Did you see that, or do we just show up?
I think you just show up.
I would need to go back and look.
Okay,
Francie. That's a
don't
good
worry about it. I'll
question.
figure it out. Thank you.
I think you just show up. They usually
Yeah.
do them in like that ballroom off the bar. And they can fit a couple.
Where is it at?
The Limelight.
I don't know where that is, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah, just go
Across
Go to Ruby
straight
Park
in
and
the
cut
door,
through.
past the bar, and you'll see the,
Okay,
Yeah,
the meeting room there.
okay. Sorry, go ahead, John.
we gotta show you around
And
town a
then,
little bit here.
you know, just a note, the rural and remote STR discussion is scheduled now for next week, March 28th.
Yeah, I saw that.
When we had looked to move it to this week originally, we had missed that John Elu was going to be on vacation, and we definitely need him here for that conversation. And then we are working on scheduling our meeting in Redstone for to further the STR discussion that was started. Would like to get some feedback from the board. We're looking now at dates in May, either May 3rd, 4th, 17th, or 18th. We're trying to avoid May 10th through 12th, as we'll be missing Jeanette Muzio. And May 30th through June 1st is the CCI Summer Conference, and anticipate we'll have, you know, at least a couple board members and maybe staff at that. But I don't know if the board wants to look at calendars now, or if you want to give feedback to Charlotte.
I'm just briefly looking.
I just would say either Francie or I have to be at APSHA the evening of the 3rd or 17th.
Okay.
What were the other days, John? Because Northwest Cog Economic Development District has their seminar thing.
So we had May 3rd or 4th, or 17th or 18th. It sounds like APSHA is the 3rd and 17th. The Redstone residents did request, if possible, we do that as an evening meeting, so folks who are working or commuting might be able to attend. And so if we don't have a evening conflict on the 4th or the 18th,
That's on the 4th.
one of those 2 dates.
The
might
4th
be
is the Economic Development District seminar in Silverthorne.
And does the 18th work for you, Steve?
How's the 18th looking then?
18th looks good to me.
I'm okay on the 18th,
I'm good.
18th looks good.
I'm good for the 18th.
as of right now.
Yeah.
So we're thinking of an evening meeting, at what time?
Francie, don't do that.
So, Francie, we will work on times and bring those back, but I think last time we went, did we go 4 to 6 last time? I think folks were concerned, so we'd probably want to start, I'm guessing, after 5, maybe go 5:30 to 7 or something like that.
I'm putting it temporarily on my calendar.
Too.
Okay?
Okay. Let's see, and then we will be adding prep time for a joint meeting with City of Aspen on open discussion on March 28th. And we have a joint meeting coming up on April 4th.
Can I ask a question? John,
April
when does the new council get sworn in? We don't want to have our meeting a week before the new council, do we?
No.
Yeah, I know when we timed these meetings, it was with that in mind. I can't remember the exact date, though.
Can we double check? Because I thought it was the next week.
Do we want to
can
get
double-check
together before then, John, with Tori?
Yeah, and I was going to meet with Sarah. I think on this meeting, last time we talked, Francie, the goal was going to be to update on our strategic plan goals and get an introduction to the new council members.
Okay.
Our retreat goals.
Okay. That's pretty short, our retreat goals, affordable housing.
Well, we have the other big rocks too. We can talk a little bit about the jail and that sort of thing too.
Yeah, that's what we do about the jail, we talk.
April 25th.
What? April
They're
25th?
bringing, yeah, the CJCC recommendations should come to this board Tuesday, April 25th.
That would be great, really great. Okay,
Thanks, Kelly. And
Anybody else
Francie, I
have
don't know if
anything?
you can see, I think Greg has his hand raised.
yeah,
Is
Greg?
that at the Silverthorne
Yeah,
Rec
thank
Center?
you. I just wanted to say,
it's not. It's-
regarding the March 23rd event that Audrey
Hang on.
sent, it's free. It actually begins at
Supertech
6, but you
Pavilion.
can go half an hour early at
If you head
5:30
up.
for beer specials, they
Okay,
say.
Blue River
And it's,
Specials. That's
and
great.
so that's on that. And then next week, I'm going to be gone for spring break, and so I'm going to miss the meeting. If we push the STR discussion, then I won't be here for that. Just wanted to update you on that. I'm
Send
sorry
this
I'll be
on.
missing that.
I didn't know we had a spring break at our age.
Greg's always on spring break.
This is my children's last spring break as they're graduating high school, and so we're taking them out of town to a warm place for a week.
That sounds great.
I have a,
Patty?
yeah, next Tuesday, I know we have, for some reason, I was confused. I thought it was the 5th week of the month and we didn't have anything. But we have that work session, which is pretty packed, especially with rural remote on there. That could be a day we're transferring Tommy back here. I don't know right now, but might be in transit. So we'll have to figure it out because hospitals don't usually like to keep people any longer than they have to. So I'll just keep you guys in the loop. I'm hoping, if anything, we can bring him home before Tuesday. But I've got to figure out when there's a bed if he goes to Heritage for some more rehab. So I'll just keep you guys. Tommy thinks he's coming home tomorrow, but I had to tell him he's not coming home tomorrow. So we'll try and, I'll keep you guys posted. But there's a possibility that it would only be the 3 of you.
Okay.
So,
So I guess I want to ask the question, do we still want to bring the rural and remote STR question forward if there may only be 3 of you, or do we want to push that a week?
my thinking is, I'm just giving you a heads up more than anything. I'm thinking that he'll either be home by then, maybe Monday, and home or something. He's progressing really well, so I'll know more when I get back down there again, but that's still pretty close.
And you'd be traveling from Denver up
I
here.
would probably be on the road on Tuesday. But everything is kind of up in the air.
I think we should postpone it. I think Patty should have the freedom to take care of Tommy, and Greg won't be there, so let's postpone it one more week, John, if that's possible.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate that. I just sent you guys the agenda for the Economic Development District, the latest
thanks.
I just got. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Kelly?
John, I'm just wondering about general timing for the Growth Advisory Committee work to come before us.
Yeah, so I know they are in their last few set of meetings now, putting recommendations forward. I wish Kara was on. I just looked at that timeline and it is completely out of my head right now, Kelly, but I believe they're targeting the end of May to have their recommendations, and we'll be getting time scheduled with the board.
In May, you think? Later?
It'd be at the earliest end of May. I think it's more likely to come in front of you in June.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we have a RAFTA board retreat in June. Let me just quickly look at that so that we don't schedule them here then. Let me just quickly look. RAFTA board is not on the calendar yet. I think it's the week of the 6th though, isn't it, Greg?
You just said the 9th, I thought, June 9th.
What?
Sorry, did you call me? I'm sorry, I was distracted.
I'm wondering when the RAFTA board retreat is. Do you remember? The 9th is a Friday.
Yeah.
Let me go and look.
Wasn't it June
I should
6th?
know
But
that.
I don't see it posted yet.
Yeah, let me keep going and I'll find it and get back to you.
Okay. So anyway, John, just to be aware that we don't want to over conflict with that. Okay, anything else?
We're gonna look to do a joint meeting, I think, with the planning commission on when those recommendations are presented. So we may even look for a special meeting day for you guys on that.
That would be great to have P and Z there, really great. And were you on when Jeffrey was talking about wanting to have quarterly P and Z joint meetings? I think that would be a really great thing for us to pursue. I don't know how much conversation we have to have around it, but I can't imagine any of us would be opposed to that.
Yeah, and that's similar, you know, kind of having a schedule like that is similar to what you do certainly with open space and trails, and maybe a good practice to get started as you all are processing the recommendations of the growth committee too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
You're probably gonna meet more than quarterly on that.
Steve?
The new Aspen City Council swearing in is on April 11th,
So it's after our joint meeting, John.
after our joint meeting,
Oh, well,
Thank you, Steve.
scheduled joint meeting.
good job, Steve.
Okay, let us look at that date, because that, I thought we were targeting after,
I thought we were too.
council was sworn in.
It might
So do
be.
you want to talk to Sarah and get back to us on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Good move, Steve. Okay, so we're gonna have open board discussion. Kelly, do you want to start with your topic about the statewide housing project?
I think CORE is on, so do we want to hear from them? Because since mine is scheduled to take a little longer.
Are they on?
It's up to
Oh, they
you.
are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with the core letter. I think it's a great idea.
Everybody seen the core letter?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take it on to the Economic Development District meeting on Thursday.
The only question, I think we have the core team on, staff found out about this yesterday, so we haven't really had time to understand, you know, what obligations, if any, we're under as a partner agency. So it may be good for the board to understand from core what obligations you all might be making in supporting the grant.
Does it
Francie, I think
require
we
us
have
to
their
engage? Is that what you want to know, if it requires us to engage?
Well, yeah, my understanding is the letter of support is required from local governments, and that there's some level of joint planning or support expected of the local governments. And we just haven't had an opportunity to ask those questions yet. And so it may be very minimal, it may be more significant. You may just want to know that before you
Okay,
sign on to the letter.
okay, good to know. And we have a hand up from the speaker laptop.
I think it's from CORE.
They're gonna join in just a second.
There he is.
There.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Dallas.
Hi, Dallas.
Hi, it's good to see everyone. Thanks for giving us a couple minutes here just to talk about this. And John, thanks for raising that question. I'll just, if it's okay, I'll just dive in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this is a grant application to the Economic Development Administration. That's a federal agency under the Department of Commerce. We've been working with these guys for 4 or 5 months now to try to lay this out and line it up. And we're really getting close to the finish line at this stage. This is a very simple grant application to get funding to support a green workforce study for the Roaring Fork Valley, so we can get a better understanding of the challenges we're going to face on the workforce side in trying to advance our climate action goals and generate some recommendations around strategies we can consider to try to address those challenges. My goal in trying to, or our goal in trying to advance this grant is also to generate the quantitative data we think we'll need to be truly competitive for future grant applications to advance a true green workforce project as those kinds of opportunities come around. There are about $200 million earmarked in the Inflation Reduction Act specifically for workforce development projects, which isn't really a lot in the context of the Inflation Reduction Act and the $370 billion allocated for this work. So we want to make sure we're really competitive and can bring as many of those dollars into our valley as we possibly can to help our workers gain the skills they need to be competitive in this environment. So this application, as John pointed out, requires us to seek out letters of support. Actually, they asked for just one. I reached out to all of our partner communities about this, and the feedback I got was that maybe it would be a good idea to kind of fudge the system a little bit and see if we can get as many of our partner communities as we can to sign on to a single letter, because we think that would really enhance our chances and really demonstrate the level of support for this application. There are no obligations for Pickens County or any of our other partners on this application. The burden falls solely on CORE to administer these funds and to oversee the study. So really we're just asking for y'all to consider signing this letter of application, and it's our goal hopefully to try to get this turned around and submitted even by the end of the week. The grant application is pretty much written and done at this stage. We have a couple I's to dot and T's to cross, but this is one of the last lingering pieces that we need to move forward.
Okay. Greg, you have a question?
If I could, I just want to add something regarding green workforce. It might sound a little nebulous, but what I've been seeing as I read the information and talk to people and participate with CORE is that we really don't have a green workforce that's prepared to take on whether it's electrification or electrification of buildings or energy conservation measures with HVAC systems. It's going to be a huge lift to have an educated and competent transition of a workforce that's used to doing things one way when we really need to start doing things another way. And I think this hopefully will contribute to that, to helping us understand that and then develop it, whether it's electricians or apprentice electricians or HVAC technicians. I hear over and over again, they're all hesitating to dive in because they don't have the skills, or they don't have the tools, or just the basic knowledge of these new systems that are coming out. And so I think we're gonna have a real problem with workforce in general, but ones that are going to be adept at electrification. It's going to be really critical, and I'm enthusiastic about this. So I just wanted to lend that I think this is a pretty important thing. I don't think it's costing us any liability or any money right now to participate. So I'm going to encourage my board to let's sign this and move it along and hope for the best.
Patty.
Yeah, and Greg and Dallas, the timing is probably right, because tomorrow evening I'm meeting with Rachel Looney. Now she has a different name now, Turin, at Northwest COG. She's the Executive Development Director for Northwest COG. And Northwest COG, the members of the State Labor Task Force, Labor Board, folks all sit there, labor workforce, I should say, sit on the EDD. So I'm going to talk to Rachel about it tomorrow. This is something that's kind of been batted around at the Northwest COG EDD level. So it might be something of interest also for them, just to kind of keep them a great resource for CORE to be able to touch base as far as just information. So I will talk to Rachel tomorrow, and I'm not going to be attending the EDD meeting on Thursday, but I will be at the Northwest COG meeting. And I'll just make sure, Dallas, that you have the contact information you need to reach out, because I think it would be a great opportunity to utilize the Economic Development District resources. Eagle County is a member, Basalt's a member, Aspen, Pickens County, Snowmass Village, so on this side of the mountain anyway. So let me see and Glenwood Springs. So let me see what I can do to help you out.
Dallas.
Patty, and it may help you to know as well, if it's okay just to chime in real quickly. I'm working directly with Rachel on this.
Oh, you are?
And Northwest COG, yep, and Northwest COG is going to sign a letter of support for this as well.
Great. Well, I'm vice chairman of the EDD, so I will definitely make sure we get that done. So perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead,
Thank
Steve.
you.
I've just read that across the United States, there's a shortage of about 1 million workers for being electricians and plumbers, because the older electricians and plumbers are retiring and there aren't the young people moving into those trades. So this could be an opportunity for training a new generation of electricians and plumbers. They could be trained specifically for working on the retrofitting houses and whatnot, but maybe they could attain the skills then to be just a general electrician or plumber doing all sorts of other jobs too. So that's something to keep in thought, just to maybe have it be a general training with interest in the green building trades, but giving them young people a skill that they can do. I have a nephew in Anchorage who is graduating from high school this year, and he's going to become an electrician apprentice going out of high school. That's his plan right now. We need a whole lot more young men like that to learn these things. So I totally support this too.
Dallas, do you know who Michael Lowe is? This is Francie. Do you know who Michael Lowe is here in the Valley? I think one of his organizations is called EPIC. And he works with getting kids from high school into careers, and it's kind of like the old concept of VOTEC training. And so if I'm going to meet with him tomorrow at the Housing Summit, and if you want me to connect you guys, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. I've been trying to reach out to those guys actually, and haven't had an opportunity to connect yet. And I'll be at the Housing Summit too for at least part of it
Okay,
tomorrow.
great.
So maybe if there's an opportunity to connect there, I'd appreciate that.
That's great. Any other questions for Dallas?
Thank you.
Okay, so,
It's great to see you all.
all right, thank you, Dallas.
Bye.
So, John, does that assuage your concerns about this?
Yeah, just wanted to make sure we understood that as a question we didn't get a chance to ask.
Okay, so is it all right with you guys if I pass this
Oh,
back
yeah.
to Charlotte to send out with my signature?
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, go ahead, Kelly.
Okay. And I will have to leave at 4:15. I apologize. I think this might be the last day I have to leave at 4:15.
All
I
right.
think my childcare is going back to 5
Oh,
o'clock.
he's graduating from
I
college.
do have-
I know, right?
Is
He's going
yours
back
gonna
to 5
take-
o'clock or 5:15 pickup starting in April.
Oh, good to hear.
And they're on spring break next week. So.
Do you need the whole 15 minutes? Because there are a couple of
Well,
things
I
I
had
would like you
30
to
minutes
hear.
is what I originally
Yeah.
was slotted.
I mean, until you're leaving.
So let's see how quickly we get through it. I will get through it in at least 20.
Let me ask one quick question before you start that. On the QQ letter about the Uinta.
Uinta Basin?
Yes. There's a place for us to request having our signatures, and I'm just wondering, do we want to all sign on as Pickens County Commissioners to the objections to that railroad?
Could you send it on to me again, please?
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely want to sign it.
You?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Greg,
would
you
too.
okay with that? Okay, so
Yeah,
that's all I
thank
need
you.
for, before you leave. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so what I wanted to check in with you all today is this land use code for the delivery of attainable housing policy proposal that Governor Polis has been working on, and I believe will be introduced this week or Monday at the latest. So through CCAT and CCI, I've been involved in a lot of conversations and listening to the governor's office staff present what they are trying to do. If anyone listened to the state of the state, the governor said, Colorado's unaffordable. We are behind in producing affordable housing. It's going to be my goal in this session to make sure we tackle this problem so we don't end up like California. I mean, in a
Meaning
nutshell,
what?
meaning their average home price is $1 million, and Colorado's average home price is $600,000. And the governor's kind of approach has been, we need more supply to bring down the cost and make sure that all of our workforce can afford to live and work and rent or own in Colorado, and to reduce the stresses on households which are cost burdened, which is quite a lot of the state, both in rental and housing pricing. And so you all would have received an email. I'm not sure if you would have clicked on it, but through a CCAT newsletter with a brief outline that came from Healthier Colorado. So there's been a coalition of groups working directly with the governor's office on this. We are not one of them. Our local government groups are not part of that coalition. We've been invited to give feedback on concepts, but we are not part of the coalitions formulating this policy. That coalition has been Conservation Colorado, SWEEP, which is the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, Healthier Colorado, and I think some chambers and others have been directly providing feedback on this, whereas we've sort of been responding to what we've been given. The governor's office has not, they did a similar summary that they let us see on Friday. They let us look at a draft of the bill. I speed read about 40 pages of it in a meeting we had with them on Friday, but they would not let us take any of these materials, and they would not let us circulate any of these materials. So the materials we got from Healthier Colorado are all we have. So that's just the landscape of the conversations. I think it's gotten much, 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 much better since the beginning of the conversations. And the approach right now is to do some requirements through legislation and to do other requirements through a rulemaking proposal that DOLA will administer. They are requesting a $20 million appropriation to go along with this bill to provide technical capacity to local governments to implement this. So that's sort of
$20 million just for technical capacity?
Wow. It's not completely clear to me what exactly is in the legislation and what exactly is in the rulemaking, but I have a basic understanding. And I think what I just would, since I'm going to be talking very quickly, I'm not sure we'll get to a point of any position today, maybe just raise some red flags. I would say we might want to consider what a position might be, what might get us to a position of support, what might, if we would ever, take a position on this or not, what that might look like. And I would invite you all to attend CCAT's meeting from 10 to 12 on Thursday, which I believe has gone out broadly to the membership.
Yeah, it's out.
The first hour of that is the governor's office talking about the detailed plan and then discussion. Then we're going to kick the governor's office off and have discussion among CCAT. So what I'll endeavor to do in 10 minutes is what they'll do in 2 hours on Thursday, if you would like to join. So what they're thinking about is how can the state weigh in on land use authorities to have them work in a way that's going to deliver more affordable housing. And they have geographically broken up the state for different approaches to this. So urban areas will be treated differently from what they even call urban tier 2 areas, from rural resort job centers, from non-urban municipalities, and then counties as a whole won't really be brought into the fray in this legislation.
It's just municipalities? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's,
And regions, maybe.
yeah, it's a little bit different. So, like in Boulder, the city of Boulder is going to have different requirements than like what unincorporated Boulder. Now, because our area is considered a rural resort job center region, it really implicates like Glenwood, Basalt, Carbondale, Aspen coming together, and the requirement for those areas is to come up with a regional plan for delivery of affordable housing, which I imagine is going to implicate the counties some way. So that's how we're thinking about it for at least our area. They have said and I did read language that was directly related to exemptions from this. So they are exempting non-urbanized areas. This would not, they have exempt parcel language. So it wouldn't apply to non-urbanized census tracts. It wouldn't apply to hazard areas or areas outside of formal water and sewer supply areas. So that creates, most of Pitkin County would be exempted from this, because we don't, it would be based on where water and sewer already
Right, on
exists.
infrastructure. It's
Not
based on
just,
infrastructure.
yeah, it's not just based on where you could do septic systems or drill wells. Let's see. I'm running through this really quick. So they've tried to build
Kelly,
in,
just-
yeah.
Can I just ask real quick, is this the More Housing Now policy? Is this what we're talking about in
Yes.
particular?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm looking at the file and I just sent it to Charlotte that talks about what it does and doesn't include, and I think it's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
If we don't all have that, it's something worth reviewing, and I received that in my email just today, I believe.
Yeah. And that would have come
This
from
afternoon.
CCAT, and the governor's office did say this was fine to share and discuss, and their summary looks very similar, but I thought actually was better and more comprehensive. So they have heard us about, like, we don't need a one size fits all approach. They're trying to build in sort of flexible solutions. I think where they envision coming down with a hammer, and a lot of this will be spelled out in rulemaking, is where, municipalities are just not facilitating any development of new housing. And they also recognize like how important it is for rural resort communities to have affordability tools such as deed restrictions that we need to have in order for this to work. And so they've committed to that, allowing our local jurisdictions to continue to use those tools, and that it would not go against what their aims are here. Now, the expectation is that there will be a minimum land use code for that would address things like uses by right and administrative approvals for affordable housing. And if jurisdictions are doing better than what the minimum code is, great. Jurisdictions that are not would be forced to adopt the minimum code. And that's where the state, I think, envisions really using their authorities to facilitate this. I think in a lot of our cases, our municipalities are probably doing a lot. Where we're going to have angst is like parking requirements. And they specifically call out not being able to include like overpark properties, because the concern is that drives up the cost of this housing, and they don't think we need it.
I have a question. So a county like ours or a municipality like Aspen will be same as my concern with 123. So is there a mandate in here to increase your affordable housing no matter how much affordable housing you have?
So 123 is different because you have to increase your housing if you want to take their funding.
Right, but in this
This
one
is
is like, do it.
Yeah, so one of the things that I actually think is really good about this legislation is that they are gonna do a statewide housing needs assessment. And that's what's gonna inform the requirements for the land use plans, either at a regional level or at each municipality's level.
Yeah, region, yeah, okay.
And this is something CCAT's wanted forever. Like, the state should be doing this work. We should know how to strategically
Right.
plan for the delivery of affordable housing, so they're agreeing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what will, for us up here, kind of undergird how we then plan to reach those targets as a region.
And so, and that would include our 5, I think it's 5, the 5 little towns that we have. And then, so we'd be lumped into one thing, and there will be some sort of goal, like you have to house 20% of your population in deed restrict, that kind of thing. It'll be something
That's what
like
I
that.
envision, but I think
That's
all of that is
interesting.
gonna get hammered out in the rulemaking process.
But a municipality like Aspen is well beyond that.
Right.
So can they share some of that data
I think
with
so.
Glenwood? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, great, thanks.
Yeah,
Share it with Glenwood.
yep.
But you can exempt out, you have to formally exempt out, we don't know that yet. Or can you pick and choose what you want to stay in on, or we don't, that'll be flushed out probably
Right.
further.
But
Okay.
this is a mandate, not an opportunity, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, if you're not,
123 is an opportunity.
and there's gonna be some municipalities that don't want to do this,
Of
and
course.
the state is going to come
Make
down
them.
on them.
Really, there's gonna be some on the plains out there that don't want to be told
Well,
what to
they
do?
probably won't, it probably won't even affect them, because they're
No,
too
it's
small and
just-
they're not in urbanized census
Right,
areas.
And
they
they're
don't
not-
have, they don't
and their
have.
house-
I mean, I will
They don't
say,
have
like,
water
this,
Housing is not overpriced.
this is endeavoring to do some good land use
Absolutely.
planning, right? It's like, let's put density where transit is, like,
Water and
let's-
sewer.
Yeah, exactly. You know, things that I think theoretically we all support. It's not doing anything to stop the shitty land use that already takes place now, which I think is the flip side
You
of
mean
the
like
coin.
the 35 acres?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would be great if we could.
So, and I will say, so if there is a graph on kind of the almost the second to last page, which I find to be helpful because it says sort of where are these policies going to apply. So in rural resort job centers, housing needs assessments and plans will be required. Accessory dwelling units will be required, that as a kind of use by right with administrative approvals. Again, this is where there's already water and sewer that will set up the municipalities to just say, like, we don't have water to serve this more square footage here. We're using this water for something else. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic that could be problematic.
Is the state paying for this assessment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Middle housing is what they refer to as multiplex, duplex, triplex, quadplexes. Again, this in urban areas is going to be required with administrative approval, whereas in our area, has additional flexibility about where it would be appropriate or not. Key corridors, I think this is a little squishy. This is on bus transit areas. Again, so like I think about, like where Steve's BRT stop is. Like there's no water and sewer there, so that should prevent any requirement for
Requirements.
development. But if there was water and sewer there in a similar, place, then we might run into some conflicts with what we want to do, what our master plans say, and what
Like
this
a
is
Brush
requiring.
Creek.
Yeah.
Algebra.
And then I will say there are going to be future requirements in the comp plan, so the comprehensive master plans that counties are required to do, to look at strategic growth objectives, to look at greenfield development. So they want to know, like, where are you trying to preserve land, and what other parcels are identified for potential future development. They want to know water availability and water loss.
This has got to be years away, because this assessment, if they're going to try to learn all of that about every single place in
No.
Colorado.
So the comp plans are our responsibility.
Oh.
What the state is saying is when you update your comp plan, it's now going to have to include these additional
I see.
things,
Okay.
which are good things. I mean, water
Yeah.
availability is something
Okay.
like this
Okay.
is good stuff. But so I'll stop there because I'm going to have to go. But so in a nutshell, there's some definite requirements as far as you know, assessments have to happen, ADU and multifamily in some areas are gonna have to happen, restrictions on parking, things like that will happen. They will generate a model land use code that will get enforced if your areas are not doing better than the model land use code.
Ooh, it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, and then some additional things that will come through in the rulemaking about how as a region, we are gonna meet our affordable housing obligation, and then future requirements on our comprehensive plans.
I'd love to read the bill as soon as we see it.
So is this gonna drive more space and water diversion from the west slope to the east slope?
I hope not.
Like require it? Douglas County will say, sure, we have all this land, we have water, which they don't really, but we'll build all this stuff here, we'd be glad to. But they don't actually have the water, they're gonna come looking for water over here somewhere.
It's all gonna go to the Navajo reservations if the Supreme Court has anything to say about it.
I don't know the answer.
Well, it's really interesting because it definitely ties into what Jeffrey was saying. At some point, we have to make decisions based on water first.
Yeah, and that is movement here about like, okay, there's a resource, we can demonstrate resource constraints.
Yeah.
To be able to say no.
Yeah. Okay, great.
I know Greg has his hand up. Oh, thanks,
just
John.
wanted to say, this is exciting and yeah, it's a little scary because we don't really know entirely what it is, but my take on this is that it's a step in the right direction and we should all hopefully we'll have a much better understanding of it. And I'm hoping that they're including the governor's and our own goals about electrification and intelligent home design and things like EV chargers in front of these developments, which should be part and parcel of this. If we're going to have a major push for more development of housing, it has to be the right kind of housing, and it has to be electric ready. And if it's not in there, we should be advocating for it to be in there. If we're going to try to do something this grand and this broad, it ought to be comprehensive, in my opinion, regarding energy efficiency, net zero, and electrification. Like Steve says, boy, what are our unintended consequences regarding water? This is going to be interesting, but it's great. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Thanks for that, Greg. I completely agree.
I will just say, I don't know how our municipalities and our counties feel about this. CML has definitely taken put up a wall about it because of the local control elements. Again, I do think a lot of our municipalities are probably doing this much, much better than other municipalities in the state.
Our county, yeah.
But there are some things that might be, tough to swallow for them.
Yeah. I would.
You have some hands raised.
Okay, I would guess that we are probably beyond what they're gonna say.
Yeah, you gotta go.
Greg, did your hand up?
I would hear input.
I had it up, I just took it down. I sent Abby another, just with the what the package does and doesn't do chart, in case you want to see that. I just had that, and I sent her a screen grab of
Yeah,
it.
no, it's up right now.
We see it.
Can you email that
Oh,
chart?
there's
Can
the
you
other
email
one.
that
There's
stuff?
the other one earlier. Okay, you've got
Do
the
you
whole
want that
thing up.
emailed
Yeah,
to you?
just go back a little bit.
What'd you say, Patty?
I just asked her to email that stuff.
Yeah, and that's what was linked in the CCAT notice. but
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
Did John want to weigh in? His hand, you
I
can't really see it.
was just going to comment, Kelly, I did hear back
God, I
today.
can't even see that
know Basalt and Snowmass have taken positions and written letters in opposition to the bill. I know Sarah was doing some additional backgrounding at a CAST meeting, and it was less clear if Aspen has taken a position yet.
Okay, could you get them to send those letters to us, John? That would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, good idea.
Thank you, Kelly. I have 3 things on open discussion. They're short. Do other people have things?
I'm good.
We have the letter from Bill Boyd at Smuggler, who has a very strong opposition to the I think he said fivefold increase in the
I
fees
need
for
to
the
step
soil.
out.
What?
I need to step out. I'm conflicted in discussing that.
I'm just telling you about his letter. Okay, fine.
I
you
just
step
want to
out.
keep it clean.
Okay,
I will be right here.
okay. He wrote a very compelling letter about how it doesn't support our workforce, that it's our workforce that lives at Smuggler, and we should be making it possible for our workforce to be exempted from these kinds of fees rather than, having to pay them. And I wrote him back and I explained why it's more expensive for us to deal with the soil when we can't spread it like we have been doing, and that we're just trying to cover the costs in the landfill. But I also said we would talk about it today, and I mean, have you guys not seen the letter from him? It's a laserfish
I
thing.
just read it
Yeah.
today, yeah.
Yeah, so it's on the laserfish. I found it very compelling, and I guess, I don't know how we go backwards on our decision to increase those fees significantly, but maybe we could look at exempting certain people or something. I mean, because I did try to get a handle when Kathy was here about, well, how much is this actually gonna cost somebody? And it looked like it could be pretty expensive in some cases, and I don't know, I just wanted to bring it to you guys, because he convinced me that we should look at it again. Yes, Greg? Is your
Yeah,
hand
hi,
up?
thank you. I saw that. I know Billy, and I responded as well.
Hi, Kelly.
And told him, first of all, that when we had the meeting with Kathy, we asked if it's possible that they would appeal, if the landfill would make an appeal to the state regarding this change of designation of that soil, so it could be used as cover again and not contribute to the actual volume of the landfill, more than it does already. So I told him we'd be getting back to him, and I sent Kathy his letter. I did try to explain it as well. So I know we've communicated with them. It's a compelling letter. It does seem, like it's penalizing them, but also what's actually doing is saying, hey, listen, if you're going to excavate your entire lot down 10 feet, this is what the cost will be. If everybody who plans to, I don't know, I guess we should drill back down and look at it again. It's possible we could provide some sort of relief in some way, but I don't, we are trying to discourage people from doing that on one level. And maybe there are other ways of achieving the same support for workforce. I think this is for helping people build bigger houses, and that's can be a really good thing, and I understand it. But I'm also just wondering if how far do we have to support that in particular? So it does bring up some more questions. I'm glad he brought it up, and hopefully we can help resolve this. But primarily, I'd like to see if we can get the state to change its mind.
Yeah, or get money from Superfund. So, how big a house can you build on those lots at Smuggler? They're pretty small,
Well, you can go
right?
down 10 feet.
What?
Well, the typical single wide is something like 16 by 80 feet, perhaps. I'm not sure exactly the different sizes. So if you went down 16 by 80 down 10 feet, that's a sizable volume of dirt. And I think we calculated it to be something like $150,000 in disposal fees, what used to be, 20,000 or something like
Right.
that. So it does
Yeah,
go up
it was
from that.
significant. Yeah.
It's a significant increase.
Uh-huh.
I guess if we were to support everybody doubling the size and putting in basements and all of that, to expand the size of their homes there, it's something we could go and look at again.
Well, maybe not everybody doing that, but I mean, if people live in a small trailer and then their family grows, I wouldn't object to their expanding a little bit, but if the cost is prohibitive, I don't think that's very fair. I mean, I don't know whether,
Right.
is there any money available from Superfund sources anymore?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. The thing is, I think we can look at, where is this going? In 25, 30, 50 years, it's possible that Smuggler will be a community of townhouses, very narrow, very closely spaced, or maybe even touching. It could change dramatically, and it could be a great local development with more solid stick-built homes on it, or whatever the next technology is going to be. As people are
Modulated,
replacing
pre-manufactured
people are
homes.
replacing those.
John, did you
but-
want to?
But
Sorry,
yeah,
Greg.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead and finish. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I didn't mean to.
Well, I was just going to say, if the plan eventually is to excavate, everybody down, because the cost of a square foot is so high now, the value of a square foot of internal space is so high now that everybody's incentivized to grow the size of their homes over there. I've seen it done for the last 30 years, and I lived in one for a while, and it really did make the house more livable and nice. Maybe that's the direction it's going, and we should start thinking about that, because we may be taking 10 feet by the entire size of the Smuggler Trailer Court to the landfill at some point, full build out.
John, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think the road y'all are going down, it is really a policy decision of the boards. Staff's recommendation was based on the excavated soils being dealt with as, any excavated soil that is buried in the landfill would fee-wise. But the board has the ability to differentiate either the fees and or to subsidize the enterprise fund through the general fund for those types of things. I don't think, I'd have to double check, Francie. I don't think we'd qualify for Superfund funding because the county acted to take over this responsibility early on and to have the feds out of the process.
Yeah. So what would you guys like to do? Do we want to go back to Kathy and talk to her about it and then arrange another, have it come up at another work session? Yes, Steve?
Yeah, I think that would be a good plan. If I could see a way that we could subsidize units that are deed restricted for low cost or worker housing versus properties that are free market, that are spec home kind of construction, should pay the full amount. But if it is someone in a deed restricted house just having to rebuild their house or expand it a little bit, that's where I think we should focus our relief efforts on.
I didn't realize there were open market houses there, free market houses.
Well, in that whole
Area, not just
Superfund
not
site,
just Smuggler.
it's not just Smuggler Trailer Park.
Yeah.
If we make an exception for Smuggler Trailer Park, I think we have to make, we'd have to do the same policy for the whole neighborhood.
Greg?
Yes. I think it'd be great to have Kathy come back. My first question would be, are you making an appeal to the state? Has that been initiated? I'd like to hear back that if they indeed are. She suggested they would. I think that's the first step for me, is like, let's try to change what I think is really a bad policy. And maybe we can make an appeal to the state. We're all working on affordable housing, and this just made affordable housing more expensive. So maybe there's a method or a means that we can do that as part of the conversation if we bring Kathy back in, and I'd welcome that.
Okay. John, would you be willing to reach out to Kathy about that? About whether or not she's appealed to the state and then set something up for her to come back?
I'm doing it right now.
Okay, great. All right, I'm gonna tell Patty to come back in. Okay, okay.
I can comment in general real quick. The Bevel Amendment, what happened a long time ago to exempt our waste, if they appeal the Bevel, if anybody appeals a Bevel Amendment, it could change your whole category of Superfund being able to move your swale at all, so you have to be very careful with that. And you have to remember that we have institutional controls within the Superfund side as a whole, and that's also adds additional cost to people who are developing. People outside of the Superfund site do not have to follow institutional controls like people who own property within. So that's another difference with the Superfund designation. I'm speaking in general terms.
I understand. Well, you certainly know a lot about Superfund. So.
I spent 10 years of my life dealing with this, and
Yep, I understand
yeah.
that.
So thank you, guys.
Okay, George Newman wrote a letter. He would like some time in front of us. The Hunter Creek Historical Foundation would like to come back
Love to hear.
and present to us about the Koch homestead, give us an update on the Koch homestead. And he'd love to be on the agenda late April or early May. And he would like to be exempt from permit fees for their phase 2, but he'll present that when he comes. So that's that.
And John, that would have to come out of discretionary, right?
Either discretionary or a separate appropriation.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have any problem with the Hunter Creek Historical Foundation coming before us?
I'd love to have an update.
Love to see their
Greg, your hand
progress.
is up. Is it still up or is it old?
Oh, sorry, I'll put it down. No, I don't have any questions. I welcome George back.
Okay.
He really wants back, I guess, so let's let him in.
I don't think he's planning to stay very long.
And then the Redstone Museum, their entrance into their whole entrance has been sort of degraded by the work done in the Redstone Park by OSD and whoever else is working on it. And so they have the double request, and Charlotte is on part of this. They want to know if we have any old bricks. They're thinking about doing a brick half circle in front of the museum. And so Charlotte is pursuing that with Brian and with OST to see if they have any old bricks. And then they're wondering if there's any possibility of coming to us to get funding for an entrance apron. So.
I wonder if there are any old bricks from the kiln,
Up at Redstone?
the kilns there, the
Yeah,
parts that have
yeah.
collapsed. Maybe if they could
We
make,
don't have bricks.
They have the fire bricks.
Oh,
it's like, fire brick.
yeah.
And if there, I
But
don't
they're
know,
big,
maybe there's
though.
a pile of that
Maybe.
places that collapse.
Well, OST might know.
That aren't historic.
So Charlotte is going to pursue the bricks thing, and then, so, do
Poor
you?
Charlotte, what else do we give her to do?
I know,
My
well,
God.
she just jumped right on it. The letter was to Charlotte and Francie.
So you guys are teaming up on the bricks, Steve, we're stepping out.
They're very smart. They know how it works here. They write to Charlotte. Are you interested in pursuing something about some funding for an entrance apron? I can't imagine it would be very much
Excuse me,
money.
a what? Oh,
An entrance apron, you know,
I was
a
like,
little
now we're cooking?
different kind of apron.
Well, I think that if our construction work was what damaged it, and that's what they indicate
Right.
did happen, that we have some responsibility to
Well,
help
maybe through open
correct
space.
it. And maybe it'd be the open space, or whoever was paying for the park
It's their project.
stuff should be the
Or
ones.
do we use park funds for that, John?
I think it's open space.
We still have some money in our park fund too also, which we may be able to access.
Yeah, there may be a better funding source for that. But typically what we do is ask them to put a request, a funding request in writing for the
Okay.
board to consider. I don't know if they even have an estimate at this point, or if they're even looking for maybe funding to do some of the planning and that sort of thing for it. I don't know. It's not a very big area.
I'll send her a letter back, and I'll also forward it to OST, and then we'll go from there. Okay, and then the letter, the laserfish thing from Joy Reichert about being a subcontractor to keep the highway clean, that she thinks it's too big a job for volunteers, and she would like to be hired on as a subcontractor and do the job herself. And she even described her vehicle that she would do it in, and the time of day, and I thought it was interesting. Comments?
I would just note that we would probably want to go through a more formal procurement process to make sure there's equal opportunity for other folks who
Right.
might have a similar business to also seek that kind of contract out. But we could certainly add them to the list and talk to Brian about how we're gonna do that.
Thanks for following up on that, Francis.
So is this the same section that the county's picking up?
Yes.
I think this is gonna be a much larger section now, where
Oh.
we've taken over the contracts for who had previously that
Dalwhinnie.
Dalwhinnie signs had previously funded.
It's buttermilk to the landfill.
And that's what Joy's talking about?
I believe so.
That's what she said, yeah.
I don't know.
Greg?
Hey, Francie. Yeah, on that note, I had a nice conversation with Michael, who is the manager for the Dalwhinnie, who is fairly new to the job, but he's been working for Dalwhinnie in several locations around the state, and you know, he just called and asked if he could talk to me about, you know, how did this come about, what's going on, and I think I've explained it. We had a great conversation. The upshot was he understands it's not about them in particular, but it was about the billboard nature of the signs and the poor quality of the cleanup that was done, and our own objections to the way the CDOT did this without either consulting us or following their own rules around advertisements for cannabis or alcohol. And so we had a great conversation. He came away and he left. Mostly the conversation was about, well, what can we do to participate in the community? And so I steered him to some resources like Aspen Community Foundation or nonprofits, and talked about the volunteerism in the community and the giving back that's such a great part of what holds our community together. And he got it and was really enthusiastic, and he's taking that back to his ownership, which is based in Ridgeway.
Really?
And so we'll hear back from them. So anyway, but I did want to say, we weren't singling Dalwhinnie out. It wasn't like we didn't like you compared to all the other cannabis shops in town. This was really about...
That we love.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a separate issue, and I didn't go there. But anyway, just wanted to let you all know I had that conversation and might hear back. And I think what he was telling me is that they really want to be considered a citizen or a corporate citizen of the community. So that's where we left it.
I'm glad to hear that, Greg. Thanks for doing that. I've been communicating with him also. He and I were going to get together when he comes back to town. And he was the same thing. He wants to know how to be a good member of the community and how can they contribute to the community. But it sounds like you're on top of that, so I may not even meet with him because...
I got a letter from him too since I was in the article, and I'll just let him know that you brought it up. I'll just send him a brief response so he knows that I did read his letter, and that I might be going to Dalwhinnie, Scotland in August, just to let him know. Doubt he's been there, so I'll tour it for him.
So how do we want to respond to Joy? I mean, do we want to have a professional roadside cleaner, or do we want to have the county, have Brian's
I think we
department
do.
do it, or where are we on this?
Well,
Are we planning on that, a contractor?
John?
yeah, so we can pass her name along to Brian Pettit, who's going to be overseeing that through Public Works. And if there's a procurement process to happen, her name would be included in that, but it would not be appropriate for the board to award a contract from the Diaz.
Okay, I'm going to write her a little note that says that's where we're at.
And then, John, do you have that letter? Do we need to send it on to Brian, or?
I should have it if it came through Laserfish.
It did.
It did. If not, Francie,
Okay,
I'll
then I've
delete. You
got
can
it.
just send it on to Brian.
Yeah, I'll just send her a little note and I'll let John deal after
Okay,
that.
you deal with Brian then, because I'll get rid of it on mine.
Okay, I think that is it for my open discussion stuff, dealing letters and everything. Anybody have anything else?
All of you
I have
got,
one part, brief one. You know, I thought it was interesting. Unfortunately, we've had two tragic avalanche deaths in the community within the last week. and you never really understand why people go in there, if it's a lack of information or if it's, you know, something else. But I do find it kind of interesting that the CICC, Colorado Avalanche Information Center, you know, had issued a moderate warning for the state or this part of the state, when it appears to me that we've got pretty extreme avalanche danger. And I'm not an expert on this, but it does make me wonder, if they say it's moderate, does that encourage people to go? And I'm wrestling with this, because armchair comments after such a tragedy are never really welcomed by anyone. But I'm wondering if the system's broken. If we have a climate change which is driving the most bizarre snow conditions I've seen in my lifetime here, from last weekend when it was the sloppiest Sierra cement, if I can call it that, and wind blown, and then powder on top, and then more. You know, we've had some very bizarre snow conditions, and I'm just wondering if there's something we can do to help increase the quality of the information that is being disseminated. The other thing that's disturbing to me is that when they say that people went in prepared into an avalanche area like that, they were experienced backcountry travelers and they had all the equipment. That's like saying you're a flea trying to, you know, you're going in on the back of a monster. You know, an avalanche is not going to know or care if you've got a shovel. It just simply isn't. You know, it's an overwhelming, tragic force. And so I'm just thought I'd bring it up because it's disturbing for me. I think in my lifetime here, you know, every year or two at least, you know, we get a tragic avalanche death that could have been avoided somehow. And I'm wondering if we should be contacting the CICC and asking them if, you know, do they need to recalibrate or granularize their predictions? Because quite honestly, this time of year, that time of day, that temperature, Maroon Bowl is never safe. Yet they issue a moderate warning. So just thought I'd bring that up.
That I'm calling you. We had a 3-generation discussion about this on Sunday night for quite a long time. And we looked at all of the inputs that were possible to access on our internets and everything. And I don't think this is an institutional error on Greg. I think this is personal choice error. I mean, when you hike up Highlands Bowl, there are signs everywhere that says, don't go here. And so, and people choose to go there. And I just don't think that we can say that it's the fault of the avalanche prediction system or the ski patrol or any other institution. I think it is, unfortunately and very sadly, really poor choices by people. And that was what all 3 generations that were in our conversation felt pretty strongly. We have some pretty robust skiers who've been in a lot of places, and it was just, I mean, it's terrible that it happened, and I'm really, really sorry that it happened, and I was really sorry that the ski patrol and mountain rescue and the sheriff's office all had to get involved with that. And, you know, it's a really sad situation. Yeah, Patty?
Yeah, thank you, Francie, because that's pretty much my comments is, yeah, having driven back and forth to Durango many times over Red Mountain Pass, that we were always worried about, because that's got 125 or something avalanche chutes. Always watching the reports that came out. And I think the avalanche predictors, if you can be, the weather avalanche predictors, do an amazing job in our community. And I think Francie's right. People who think they're avalanche experts, those are people who think they're dynamite experts. You know, and it's very risky. And what does bother me, I mean, it's very tragic, extremely tragic. The young man who lost his life up in Marble, extremely tragic. But people do make some unwise decisions thinking that they are experts. And but to put at risk the ski patrol, the mountain rescue people, 3 helicopters came in. Only one could actually land and bring him out. That one survivor did CPR for something like 2 hours to try and keep his friend somehow, you know, survivable. But that was really of concern to me when people make those decisions and then don't understand the consequences if there is an accident, a tragic accident, or just they need to be rescued, they're putting at risk other people's lives. And I've spent many hours in the emergency room at Aspen Valley Hospital when avalanche victims that did not survive, friends that we knew, Greg, that died in Highlands Bowl. That was very much impactful in my life. I'm not a backcountry person, but you know, it's just people need to think before they go out there. There'll be a better day another day, rather than thinking today is the day I have to go. I made my plans, I got to get out there. And that was really bothersome to me. And I think we need to be applauding our avalanche advisory institutions, as Francie put it, for the work and the effort they try and put in there. And I know how much they must feel when they have people who are killed in avalanches. It's not an easy consequence.
Ski Patrol watching those guys go.
I know.
Out there. Like, oh my God.
It's hard. But anyway, Greg, thank you for bringing it up, because I think it's worthy, and I like the Francie had a 3-generation. I just had a long drive home thinking about it when I kept hearing it on the radio, which was difficult.
Yeah, it was terrible. And the picture of the slide in marble.
It was huge.
Oh my God, that
500
was
feet across or something.
so huge. That slab was just, you don't have
Massive.
much chance at something like that. I don't think that the Maroon side, the Maroon Bowl is ever a good place to go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Francie and I worked with Jim Hanrahan for years. His brother died in Toner Bowl,
on the other side, right?
farther along.
Oh, same side, but
Same
farther along.
side, farther along,
I was
some
there
years ago.
Yeah,
I don't know the circumstances.
Rio and
but-
I were thinking it was Five Fingers, but it was not, huh?
And then when the patrolmen all got caught and they all came into the ER, that was a very difficult day.
Greg, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Nope, that was pretty much it. I just, what I see happening is that people rely more and more on technology, and they think that gives them a safe advantage when perhaps it really doesn't.
Yeah.
Whether the equipment they're carrying, the backpacks that will inflate like an airbag, or maybe the designation that it's moderate from CAIC, which I'm still having trouble swallowing that. How can they say that? Maybe there'll be some changes. Thanks.
Okay. I
Steve,
think
did you want to bring up the agenda for tomorrow?
Oh, I just wanted to say, my name's on that thing, but it was only sent to me, and then Charlotte just copied it.
Yeah, we all
So
got,
just
everybody got
ignore
it.
I got
that
it by,
says-
I got it by email.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have
I got
fun.
an email. So, okay, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. Not
I
you.
will be here in the room at noon.
Okay. And one thing I do want to talk about in the near future is the times of our meetings, just to put it out there that I would like
You
to
mean
bring that up
noontime?
again. But I've talked, I think, to everybody except for Kelly, and she's not here, so.
All right, thanks.
All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you, guys.